Chapter 1131. Whoosh! The dark purple sword ray pierced through the sky and the earth with an ominous light. The arc of the sword flashed and disappeared. The space melted like snow, and the collapse occurred silently. Along with the collapse, tens of thousands of magical beasts and the thousands of feet tall mountain range in the distance were all turned into bubbles. Yin Nuoxing's expression was cold, and his eyes flashed with ruthlessness. Every slash of his sword was accompanied by the disappearance of tens of thousands of lives. The magnificent mountains and rivers were destroyed without a trace, and only the aura of annihilation was left in the space. The bleak sunlight shone on this scene of pure destruction. There were no broken limbs, no corpses, only destruction. All the lives that were slashed by the sword chi were destroyed. He was currently in the southern belt of the Seventh State, on the way to the ruins of the Dark God Hall. In his deduction, the ruins of the Dark God Hall were currently floating in the vicinity and would not move in a short period of time. It had been knocked into the void in the battle all those years ago, breaking away from its connection with the real world and landing on a special interface between the void and the real world. However, to be specific, that was still the void but not the pure void. It would take some time to find it, and he would peel the space apart bit by bit until it almost fell into the void. He sat on a mountain peak and rested for a while deducing the location of that special layer of space. However, he was surrounded not long after he sat down. He was surrounded by thousands of magical beasts and magical beasts. Those magical beasts were all affected by the malicious intent contained in the torrent of information, and they were far more dangerous than usual. They wanted to kill him here at all costs, or he could kill them all by himself. The rumbling sounds of the battle spread far and wide. Yin Nuoxing had been fighting here for a full hour. The entire mountain range, from thousands of miles away, all came over to join in the fun. There was no end to it, and it made him very impatient. He had just returned to the real world from the void and sat down for a few minutes when he was surrounded. Just as he expected, these creatures with low intelligence and weak spirits were easily affected by the malicious intent. His aura had a great attraction to these blinded creatures, and they would abandon everything and rush over just for the sake of the inexplicable malicious intent in their hearts. They would not even know what had happened until they died. There were other people spying on this place from afar. Perhaps they were attracted by him, or perhaps they were attracted by the commotion here. There was a faint hostility. There were very few life forms that appeared in this area that did not have hostility, blind malice, as if hostility toward Yin Nuo planet was something that was designated by the rules. The life forms that lived under the rules naturally had to abide by this rule. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the people hiding in the distance. There were a lot of people, a lot. They were still observing for the time being. Such familiar gazes, so nostalgic. Hostile gazes filled with distrust, blind hatred. All of this was nostalgic. It made him happy. This way, once he made a move, he could do whatever he wanted, right? Yin Nuoxing's lips curled into a cold smile. You guys follow your rules, and I follow my own path. There is no conflict. Bang! The light of the netherworld ruined sword flashed, and a torrent of destructive energy suddenly rose thousands of miles high from the ground and surged in all directions. The dark purple energy streaked across and devoured the beast tide and the earth. It slammed right in front of the spying people, and the energy storm that rolled up sent them flying thousands of miles away. The destructive energy made them feel cold all over. There was a faint groan in the distance. Yin Nuoxing calmly looked away. He did not kill them directly, but only issued a warning. This was the only time. Next time, there would be no next time. Chaos element and dark element surged out from his palm and turned into a sharp blade that pierced into the space. A black portal about 10 feet in size was torn open. He took a look inside, nodded slightly, and went in. He had found his destination and did not have time to play with those little bugs. Yin Nuoxing's figure disappeared along with the small portal. The gloomy and cold feeling in the world suddenly disappeared. The spying people in the distance came closer boldly and walked to the place where Yun Nuashing had just disappeared. They looked serious. There were hundreds of people who came to spy, including beginner gods and middle-level gods. Together, they were not weak. There were more people who might still be lurking in the dark. Many of them were enemies, and some of them even wanted to die together as soon as they saw each other. However, they stayed calm and did not make a move. Their hostile gazes met in the air, and they silently stepped back a little. They were hundreds of feet away from each other, and the order was maintained in a delicate balance. Everyone knew what they were here for, so they did not start a fight immediately. Report: the target's code name is Chaos. He is extremely threatening, roughly estimated to be between the high-level gods. The range of his destruction is huge, and he can easily go out of control. The chaos element has strong pollution. The inhuman thing is only a beginner god. We can't speculate based on this. We need to continue observing, but the target's senses are extremely sensitive. He can see through it even if he hides under 10 layers of fake space thousands of miles away. He was warned from thousands of miles away. How domineering. That person is too dangerous, especially that kind of energy, the chaos element. I feel that when facing such extreme energy, even my soul will be distorted. How could the realm of the gods give birth to such a dangerous thing? We should destroy it as soon as possible. The chaos person has left, and we can't track him. The defense of the important areas in the 7th state has been raised by several levels. For ordinary people, it is impregnable. However, we don't know if it has any effect. The blind hatred brings limited information. As long as it appears in our line of sight, it will make us uncontrollably hostile. We can reduce the hostility with willpower, and we can also control our killing intent so that we won't act impulsively. But that inhuman thing doesn't seem to like this feeling. It was given a harsh warning, and the next time it snoops, it may be killed. It has 12 elements. Unbelievable. According to ancient records, even the gods can't reach this level. If what the information storm said is true, then it is sufficiently dangerous. We need to eliminate it as soon as possible. The dark element. The barrier of the divine prefecture. Such ancient news. Boss, I think it's better if we don't touch that person. The bastards gathered here are all filled with killing intent. Let them go. What? You don't want to think about it? I really don't think anything good will happen if we touch that thing. So the big shots of the Cloud Top State have already gathered for a meeting. That's fast. In the past, they wouldn't even gather if they didn't dawdle for 2 or 3 days. This thing that has already disappeared popped up so quickly. The 6 families of the 6 Free Clouds Gates have already confirmed it. I think those 6 families are after the god weapon. But I'm also very curious. Which god weapon does that inhuman thing have? It won't be good if any of the 48 god weapons in the world fall into his hands. Dangerous people need to be eliminated as soon as possible. The decision has been made. Let's do it. In the 10th state, Xian and the others rushed out of the temporary teleportation circle. Under the lead of Zai and Yi Shi, they crossed more than half of the state. After confirming the direction, they flew toward the 9th state without stopping. They went through the teleportation circle and took the airship. After a long time, they finally arrived at the border between the 9th and 10th states. Even Zai was so tired that she almost vomited blood. She had never tried to travel like this before. In the past, it was very easy for Yun Nuo planet to fly with them. They could casually cross a large region. This made them feel that it was not easy to rush to a state. Thinking of this, she missed that guy even more. Feng, and Little Qing could borrow Yin Nuoxing's power through the soul contract, but it was no longer useful now. The energy that came back from the other side of the soul was contaminated with the elements of chaos. The destructive energy made the 3 of them scared. It seemed that even the power that Yun Nuoxing carried with her had become chaotic. The 3 of them had no choice but to chase after her bit by bit. The news they heard along the way made everyone's expression extremely solemn. From ordinary people and low-level cultivators to high-level gods, they were all talking about that inhuman thing. Well, it made sense. He had suddenly appeared in everyone's mind with that kind of image, and he had even been forcibly instilled with hostility that did not belong to him. This matter had already become public knowledge, just as they had expected. It really did take a moment for everyone in the small divine prefecture to know about it. Even the people in the world of the gods should not be an exception. All kinds of versions and speculations were spread through the streets and alleys, and just as they knew, they were all negative stories. Some said that he was a demonic god from the demon world, an evil spirit from the outside world, and a hidden god of destruction. Anyway, there were all kinds of rumors. The information torrent passed the news to everyone equally. Although it was not complete, it was already a fatal push that made countless lives hostile to Yin Nuashing. The tide of darkness went crazy. Zai and the others could only be glad that the ordinary people and the low-level cultivators did not go crazy together. They just had a lot of hostility. The hostility was deadly, like a venomous snake lurking in the dark night. In addition, wherever Yin Nuashing went, there was a monstrous black aura around him. Wherever he went, he would attract attention, and it was the kind that could be felt from hundreds of thousands of miles away. Basically, when he showed up, he would be surrounded by such strong gazes. I found a problem. It's good news, Yuanshi said mysteriously. He had just returned from a tour of the city. When Ming heard the word good news, the wings on his back fluttered. What good news? Yuanshi smiled and grinned. The information contained in the information torrent is not complete. According to the legend, Little Star has a divine weapon. He has a total of 12 elements, including the element of chaos and the element of darkness. Moreover, these two elements are extremely dangerous and destructive. They can distort everything and create the barrier of the small divine lands. Everything we know before the element of darkness was sealed has been leaked. This is also a part of our minds, right? Everyone looked at each other and nodded. Nightmare urged, just say it. Yuanshi nodded. The details of Little Star's divine body and the divine weapon he has were not leaked. The lies that are hostile right now are all caused by the blind hostility in their heads. For now, there is nothing that can directly incite everyone to attack at once. The best they can do is to pay attention and keep a distance. Perhaps someone will make preparations in secret, but they won't go all out in the beginning. As for the two pieces of information that I mentioned just now, Yuanshi coughed and nodded. That's what it is. Everyone understood. The divine body and the fact that he had a divine weapon on the divine sword record and the divine weapon ranking had not reached the point where everyone knew about it, so it was not a big deal for now. However, once the word prophet was added to the hostility and hatred, this matter would be out of control. Fortunately, the transmission of information between the small divine lands and the outside world was slow. Moreover, Yin Nuashing's appearance had become unrecognizable. Even if the news spread to the realm of the gods, no one would know that he was the divine body that was widely known in the past. These two things were a fuse. As long as they controlled it well, it would be fine. However, they were not worried that anyone would spread the news. The people here were probably the only ones who knew about it. Obviously, they would not be so bored as to spread the news. That would only add to Yin Nuashing's troubles. Ming frowned and sighed. Even if they know, it is useless. Everyone was stunned. After drawing a clear picture of the relationship in their hearts, they could not help but smile bitterly. It was indeed useless. Compared to this, what they needed more now was to know where that guy had gone and what the big shots in the small divine lands thought and planned to do. Xian and Yi had just returned from the 9 divine temples sub-palace in this city when they heard everyone sighing. They could not help but be stunned. Zia's cheeks trembled. Isn't it just a little tiring from a journey? Do you have to be like this? Xian blinked. You are so tired that your complexion has faded. No, we were just talking about other things. Yuanshi smiled bitterly and waved his hand. He said seriously, let's not talk about this first. How are things on your side? Violet Knight nodded. The 9 deities' temples had already been informed by the realm of the gods a few years ago. They all knew that there was a new temple master in their temples, and the flood of information did not affect them. I personally monitored them, and there was no problem. Not long after the two of them returned, Ding Mengyu and Jun Luo also hurried back. They looked nervous. Just as they were about to say something, Ziyi waved her hand. Rest well. It is time to go. If you have anything to say it on the way. That little bastard will not wait for us. Everyone grinned and got up. Yishi reluctantly used the spatial teleportation formation again to send everyone to the 6th province. The formation was on the verge of being destroyed. Yishi was very distressed when she saw it. She quickly put the formation away and let it repair itself. Sigh, it seems that the formation that I made based on the patterns won't last long. I should find some time to learn how to teleport. Spatial coordinates are troublesome. Why doesn't every city have a teleportation gate to the small divine lands? If there is, Yao Hua could not help but grumble. If there is, it would have gone bankrupt on the way. Nightmare looked at him and said calmly, Don't you think about how many people we have here? Everyone. So, it was poverty that limited their speed? Z waved her hand and threw out a gigantic flying ship. Once everyone was on the ship, they quickly flew towards the 3rd province. This flying ship was bought from an auction house when they were tired from rushing. It was comparable to a god emperor at full speed. Furthermore, it would not have any problems running at full speed. People would die from exhaustion, but as long as the ship had energy, it would continue to run. Even if it was damaged by external forces, it would automatically absorb the free energy in the world to repair itself. After running for a long time, Ziyi finally regained her senses. She looked at Jun Luo, Yi, and Ding Mingyu. You two seem to have something to say. You finally remembered. I didn't even dare to interrupt you two when you were in such a hurry. Jun Luo, Yi laughed bitterly. She ran her fingers through her hair and said, You went to the 9 God Temple's branch palace. Did you hear anything about the 6 idol cloud families? 6 idol cloud families? Everyone repeated the name in unison and looked at each other. Zian and Ziyi looked at each other and shook their heads. Ding Mingyu said, All right, no one knows. It looks like the news hasn't spread yet. The 6 idol cloud families refer to the 6 transcendental forces that have been passed down since ancient times in the small divine lands. They are the pioneers of the small divine lands and were the first to exist in the small divine lands. Jun Luo Yi said. Pioneers. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. Nightmare suddenly realized something and raised her head. Are you talking about the 6 forces that first appeared in this wasteland that was destroyed by the dark element after the small divine lands barrier was formed and the small divine lands was reborn? Jun Luo Yi nodded. Jun Luo Yi nodded. Everyone was astonished. No wonder they were called pioneers. The 6 gates of idol clouds had been here ever since the small divine prefecture was reborn. They cleaned up the mess and continuously expanded and purified the land of the small divine prefecture. When the small divine prefecture was reborn, it was still covered in dark elemental energy. The entire area was filled with dark elemental energy. It was a land of death. If the dark elemental energy was not expelled, it would be impossible to revive the area. The 6 forces that first entered the small divine lands were also 6 great forces that couldn't be underestimated in the god realm. Of course, the ancestors of the 6 forces were all Empyrean gods. As for how strong they probably weren't as strong as Boss. According to the records, the 6 of them weren't even peak Empyrean gods. Nightmare said softly the 6 Empyrean gods themselves stayed in the god realm and left behind something like a doppelganger, but it wasn't just a doppelganger. They secretly brought many people from their forces into the small divine lands. Although it was said to be a secret, there were actually many people who knew about it. However, no one could see the value of the small divine lands, so no one paid attention to it. Who would have thought that the small divine lands would become like this after so many years? Now, the 6 forces in the god realm are long gone. In the High Ancient Era, they went on an expedition to the outer realm and never returned. The 6 gates were also destroyed. It is said that the Empyrean gods guarding the gates were easily defeated. I think that the 6 Empyrean gods died outside. I didn't think that there would still be traces of them in the small divine lands. I only remembered this part of the records after hearing the numbers and the experience. Hearing this, Violet Knight nodded. What about the 6 forces? Jun Luo pondered for a moment, then said, "We overheard it in the tavern. According to that disciple, the six forces have been preparing for the place you want to go to, which is the third prefecture, for a long time. It seems they want to fight their way in, right? It's fine, let them be. If they want to fight, then fight." Zai's tensed body immediately relaxed. He waved his hand carelessly. "Other than Little Star, don't even think about touching it. Furthermore, how could they touch the might of a great success divine sword?" According to what that little idiot said himself, back then, when he was at his peak, he had to use almost 10 lives to obtain the divine sword. Hearing this, Jun Luo, he could not help but exclaim. Then, she smiled bitterly and shook her head, saying, "No, that's not what I want to say. They seem to have found out what kind of divine weapon it is. Because that disciple clearly said the word sword, they may have already seen it." Violet Knight and Xian were shocked. However, before she finished, she continued, "Moreover, they are spreading the news. To be specific, the top 5 divine weapons of the divine sword record have reappeared. They are inviting all the powerful forces in the small divine lands to go and obtain it. As for who it will belong to, it will be decided after they have obtained it. Also, since it was proposed by the 6 forces, they will give up the first priority." Everyone was silent. Qin Yin could not help but say, "I can see that overwhelming trouble is coming to Little Star." Yuan Shi covered his face. "This time, it is really troublesome. Damn, they can even spread the news about the 4th-ranked divine sort of time. The world is going to be in chaos, right? The 6 idle clouds sect's reputation in the small divine lands is equivalent to the 9 divine temples in the divine realm. Many people believe what they say. At this moment, the news is already spread to the 7th state. I estimate that before long, the entire small divine lands will." Jun Luo, shook her head helplessly. "They haven't said which divine weapon it is in the divine sword record. I guess they can only see it from afar, but can't get close to it." Nightmare slapped his forehead. "I'm afraid they will go against the boss. This is a trap, a huge trap, a huge trap. Countless people will die. The power of the divine sword of time, a great completion divine sword, can easily cut the entire world in half. Even the primordial realm will be shaken," Violet Knight said calmly. "But that's none of my business. If they want to die, then die. If they want to die, who can stop them?" Everyone was speechless. Xian sighed softly. She lowered her head and looked at Shiyun and Little Purple Soul, who were sitting obediently beside her. Mei Mao was a little gentle. She saw Little Purple Soul staring blankly in one direction and thought that she was missing the big idiot. She couldn't help but gently stroke her head. "Little Purple Soul, are you missing Little Star?" Little Purple Soul heard her voice and smiled brightly. Yes, I saw my brother." Xian smiled faintly. Just as she was about to pay attention to other things, she was stunned. She seemed to have heard something that she was interested in. Moreover, there were many people who were interested in it. She turned around and saw a large number of dumbfounded expressions. Ming came up to her and hugged Little Purple Soul. The golden Mei Mao looked at the little girl suspiciously. "You saw your brother?" Yes, he's over there." The little girl stretched out her little finger and pointed in a direction. Zi hurriedly stopped the flying ship. The former kept pointing in one direction. Everyone followed her line of sight, but it was a sky with lazy clouds floating. Other than that, there was nothing else. They were flying high in the sky, and very few people came to this high altitude. It was not impossible to see Yunua planet at this height. However, they really couldn't see anything. They could only see clouds. "Where's Little Star?" I couldn't help but ask. "He's right here. Big Brother is over there. I saw him. He walked into a black ruin. It's an old ruin. I saw him." Little Purple Soul looked at her seriously and pointed her little finger forward. "I saw him, but he's in a strange space. I saw him, but I don't know how to get in. It's a very special space. Big Brother said that I can open many spaces, and I just need to use my intuition. But I can't open it here. I can't open it." Little Purple Soul lowered her little head and scratched her long hair in distress. She looked a little depressed. Xian patted the little girl's head. Mei Mao looked at the empty space solemnly. That was where Yin Nuashing was. He was in there. He was in the dark shrine. Chapter 1132. Thump. There was a throbbing in his heart, and his heart suddenly beat faster. Yin Nuashing turned his head abruptly, but all he saw was a pile of ruins. The collapsed temple was mixed with the debris of other buildings. Other than the smell of time and the smell of time, there was no other trace of time here. This was a dead void where no life existed. The smell of the void and the broken floating island had completely merged. This was a part of the void, a part of the dark element. This was the ruins of the dark god temple. Only the madness of the past and the darkness and loneliness that had always existed were left. The dark shrine was the same as the 9 shrines. It was a floating island, but this floating island was very small. It was not that it was small because it was eroded by the void. It was originally small. It was the smallest among the 9 floating islands because it did not need such a large space. From the birth to the destruction of the dark shrine, he was the only one. He was the shrine master, the elder, and also the disciple. At that time, there were not many people with the dark element. He built the dark shrine purely because he could not persuade the light lass to do so. To him, it was just a slightly taller building. He had not spent much time in it. If he had to go back to the shrine, he would be taken to the light shrine by the light lass. Yin Nuashing tilted his head. There was a trace of doubt in his demonic eyes. He stopped and looked back for a while, but he did not find anything. After a while, his eyes were filled with coldness. He patted his heart and turned around to continue walking to the broken temple. Even after 70 years of silence, this land had not completely lost its vitality. Outsiders had entered this place and left behind traces of various sizes, but they themselves had disappeared into nothingness, swallowed up by the void and the dark element. Only faint but eternal traces were left behind, preserved in this land of death as specimens. There was only death here. The cold death and destruction hovered silently. The bricks and walls were maintained on the day of the destruction. Even if there were outsiders, there was not much change. The closer to the collapsed temple in the center, the fewer traces there were. No one could get close to the dark shrine. Even if they were lucky enough to stand here, they would just die. If they turned around and left in time, they would not be annihilated. Unfortunately, most people who accidentally found the ruins of the temple would be hot-blooded. The person who escaped from the temple in the records had also gone crazy. Crack! Yin Nuashing heard the soft sound of moving bricks and tiles. The netherworld ruin sword in his hand turned slightly, and in the next second, a 5-meter-long black monster suddenly jumped out of the pile of bricks and tiles. It opened its bloody mouth and arms, and its 10 fingers were like 10 ferocious blades. They sliced through the air and tore apart the walls and buildings like tofu. Those were all specially made materials, not the ordinary bricks and tiles of ordinary houses. It seems that the 4th unknown trace in the ruins was left by you. Yin Nuashing muttered to herself as she watched the black figure swiftly pass by. Immediately after, the nether void sword that she had lowered abruptly drew a crescent arc upwards. With a flash of cold light, several sinister cracks appeared in the void several thousand kilometers away. The black monster was instantly engulfed by the cold light and exploded into a large cloud of black smoke. His slender fingers flipped in the air and gently pinched some of the black ash that the monster left behind. He looked down at the ash, rubbed it lightly on his fingertips a few times, and waved his hand to disperse it. The void mist. Although it was weak, it did exist. But strangely, he could not tell if it was the void mist that created the monster, or if it had merged with the monster. The 5-meter-long monster that had the lower body of a sea serpent had a weak soul energy in it. It was a chaotic soul energy that was formed by the fusion of many souls. It had lost its essence and was only left with boundless chaos. A vengeful spirit. It was a vengeful spirit. It was formed by the souls of all the lives that had fallen in front of this black temple since ancient times. The unwillingness and negative emotions before death had created such a terrifying monster. It seemed that the void mist had somehow merged with the vengeful spirit and created such a monster. Yin Nuashing stood where she was and looked at the black, cloud-like gas that was constantly emitting from her body. She exhaled softly, and her soul energy rushed out quickly with the element of chaos. In just an instant, it had spread throughout the floating island where the Dark God Palace was located. At the same time, it merged with the void and expanded the range of her search rapidly, almost penetrating the void and returning to the small divine prefecture. A few seconds later, she opened her eyes in shock. A wisp of black gas flashed past her eyes, and she was puzzled. Strange, it's gone. It's normal for the void mist to appear in groups and nests. There's actually a mist, one here. The ripples in the void indicate that this should be a breeding ground. A large amount of void mist once appeared here and slightly changed the nature of the void. The remaining ripples and changes indicate that the mutation happened not too long ago, probably within 1,000 years. It's the same time that the void mist appeared in the small divine prefecture. Is the entire void where the small divine prefecture is located covered by the void mist? The existence of the small divine prefecture was very special. It still existed in the realm of the gods. This part of the space was normal and just followed the rules of the ancient era. However, the edge of the small divine prefecture had completely entered the void. That part of the land was directly connected to the void and exposed to the void and was directly eroded by the void mist. Could it be understood that the void outside the realm of the gods was already surrounded? Yin Nuashing narrowed his eyes and looked around. Putting aside those dangerous thoughts, he focused on the current situation. He found many traces of destruction in the ruins. The first was the natural corrosion and destruction that the Dark Temple encountered in the present world before it was exiled into the void. There were many traces of decay and even more traces of changes that suddenly stopped halfway. The second was man-made, and that happened when the Dark Temple entered the void. The third was the traces left behind by the erosion of the void. Just as strange, the erosion and destruction of the void stopped halfway. There were obvious signs of erosion and assimilation at various points on the edge of the ruins, but also stopped halfway. At this point, the void would no longer have any effect of erosion and assimilation on the ruins of the Dark Temple. It would be more accurate to say that it was still protecting the ruins. The fourth was left behind by the big monster that he had just seen. There were many traces of something scratching and scraping on the collapsed walls and broken building debris. He compared them and roughly guessed that they were left behind by that kind of monster. Moreover, it was not just one or two traces left behind. There should be a large number of such monsters that had once existed here to be able to leave behind such traces. However, they were all gone now, leaving behind an empty nest. The entire ruins were empty and silent. Those monsters that were comparable to the high-level gods left here. Where did they go? Yin Nuashing muttered to himself. These new monsters were very powerful. From the perspective of ordinary people, they were very powerful. Of course, he had only seen one of them, so he could not be sure that all of them were at this level. They had retained the characteristics of the void mist, and they had also integrated everything that the vengeful spirits had learned. In other words, those snake monsters could release divine arts. This made them even more dangerous. However, Yin Nuashing did not care about this. He was just judging whether these serpent monsters were small cannon fodder, or powerful and shiny cannon fodder. This was only for him. If these serpent monsters rushed into the small divine land and the world of the gods, it would be a disaster. With the tide of darkness and the army of darkness charging forward bravely in groups, they could flatten a state in minutes. Then they would shrink in a corner and grow without limit, continuing to flatten the next state. After a minute, he exhaled, shook his head, and threw these unclear things to the back of his mind. Currently, the number of times he had come into contact with the void fog was limited. It was unlikely that there would be a more uniform record like the Dark Age. There must have been a lot of records about the void fog in those days when the whole race fought against it. Although the void fog was no longer the abyss fog of death, and its characteristics had changed, Yin Nuashing felt that he could still borrow the records from the past to have a look. For now, he still did not want the events of the Dark Age to happen again. The underworld, it was a place that sounded like a legend. The only time it appeared, it had brought irreversible damage to the entire Yuan realm. This time, it was going to appear again with the fog of the void. This scene was so similar to the scene that the old ghost had described. No one knew what kind of evil water was brewing in their gourd. Yin Nuashing lowered his head and looked at the rubble in his hand that was partially eroded by the void. He pursed his lips. After a while, he threw the rubble in his hand into a pile of rubble not far away. He raised his head and looked at the temple in front of him that used to be more than 10,000 feet tall. Now, with the passage of time and the erosion of the void, it was only 2,000 or 3,000 feet tall. Although he did not use this temple often, he could not help but sigh when he saw the thing that he had painstakingly built destroyed. Look how fitting this place is. In the endless void, the sound of the undying dark element reverberates through the void. The collapsed and tattered divine temple. The deathly still earth is filled with resentful souls. The hollow echoes are like angry roars. The ancient land of the dead, the ancient place of silence, now welcomes an ancient soul of the same kind. How fitting all of this is. Looking at this destroyed place, he can't help but think of the past. Time flies. There are only 2 or 3 people left. How helpless all of this is. The empty temple was as empty as ever. The Dark God Temple was different from the other 9 temples. The latter were integrated into one and had more functions than ornamental. The Dark God Temple was different. It was divided into dozens of parts, and the interior was not connected. If one wanted to go to other places, they could only go around the outside of the temple. Moreover, the entrance was hidden and hard to find. Some of the higher floors did not even have a door. One had to use all kinds of strange methods to enter. Other than being used for ornamental purposes, it was useless. No one would be stupid enough to live here. Anyway, he did not plan to live here when he built it. There was only one person in the entire temple. Did he have nothing better to do than to live in such a big place? If he had the time, it would be better to decorate a small hut than to wake up and see the ceiling dozens of meters away from him every day. Shaking his head, Yin Nuashing let out a long breath. His mind was out of control again. Ever since there were no more chattering voices around him, his mind had gone berserk even more. He was always thinking about a lot of things, so much that his brain would feel tired. Sigh. Yin Nuashing sighed softly and shook his head. He lifted his feet and walked around the pile of ruins in front of him. He walked towards the ruins of the Shrine of Dark Elements, not far away. The dilapidated shrine emitted an inextinguishable black glimmer in the shadow of the void, depicting the edge of the towering ruins. It was like a lonely guardian that stood there eternally. Even its body had become a part of eternity and could no longer escape. The sound of his footsteps changed from the rustling of gravel to the sound of his footsteps landing on the hard floor. It was like a symbol of destruction and shattering behind him. He walked up to the once glorious divine temple. There was no smell of decay, and there were not too many tattered traces. The collapsed divine temple had already been left behind. In front of him was a lonely wreckage. He could still roughly see what this part of it used to look like. The rich smell of time hit him in the face. It had been too long. The Dark God Temple had existed for too long. It still retained the smell of the 3 great reincarnations. It was lonely and eternal. It was a relic of time, a relic from the ancient times. However, there was nothing here and nothing could exist. The once sturdy body of the temple had been battered beyond recognition by the passage of time, and what remained after falling into the void was its specimen. Its time was completely frozen at the moment of complete assimilation with the void, leaving only a small part of the main body of the temple. Walking into the temple, one could vaguely see its once intact appearance. However, the interior of the temple had also collapsed, with the walls and floor shattered into countless pieces. There was only a single pillar left on one side of the wall, and the other parts were all empty. The walls had either been eroded by time and the void, or destroyed by someone. There were also traces of human activity here, but there were far fewer traces. Those who could survive here were all dragons and phoenixes among men in previous eras. Perhaps there were even gods who had descended here, studied, sighed, paid their respects, and then moved on. Yin Nuoxing had already gone deep into the temple. The deeper he went, the better the main body of the temple was preserved. He did not know if it was because no one had come here, or if the outsiders were merciful to this ancient relic. His lonely footsteps echoed in the empty corridor, and there were faint echoes. Yin Nuoxing wandered according to the layout of the Dark God Palace in his memory. He was not in a hurry to go to the main hall, but wander around in other places. He was still willing to squeeze out this short period of time. Although there was nothing in the Dark God Palace, and he did not live here, many people had come here before, and some corners had left some memories. As he wandered around, he unknowingly went from the corridor to a place in the side hall. This was a rather spacious hall. It was circular in shape. A row of black and purple stone pillars in the shape of a starry sky was arranged in half of the arc of the hall. The other half was lined with stone pillars that were red and pink like flames. The walls between the stone pillars were painted with exquisite patterns. There was no pattern or thought to speak of. However, Yin Nuoxing knew that it was a record that she had left behind. It was like a diary, but no one could understand what was written. With a little decoration, the entire wall could be taken down as a work of art. The things contained in it would make even the gods dizzy. The entire hall was empty except for the center. It was unusually spacious. The space was filled with soft starlight and red sunlight. It seemed to be cast from above, but also seemed to be shot out from the walls. All these lights were not for illumination or to make the hall appear brighter. Those lights all fell on the center of the hall, the only thing that existed in the hall. It was a statue, a 5-meter-tall statue that contained real colors. It was exquisite, luxurious, and lifelike. It was in the shape of a woman. She stood in a well-behaved and dignified manner. If one ignored the huge flame sword in her hand and the pair of red and pink flame feathers on her back, she did indeed look quite well-behaved. However, with these two things and the way she pursed her lips and smiled faintly, she looked more or less naughty. She wore an exquisite light armor that blended with her red and pink dress. The entire armor was silver white and indirectly blended with the red and pink. The long skirt extended from her waist to below her knees. Under the skirt, a pair of silver-white combat boots that covered her calves were exposed. They had a metallic texture. In addition to the huge flame sword in her hand that was as big as a stone pillar in the temple, this girl with long black hair and red and pink eyes looked majestic. However, the angle at which the pair of red and pink flame feathers on her back were raised was too strange. Yin Nuoxing could not help but laugh every time she saw it. She remembered that she had personally made those wings in the past. They looked good, but when looking at the whole thing, those wings looked like they were tightly pulled from behind by someone. In an instant, this majestic goddess of the battlefield changed. However, it was still reasonable to ignore those wings that did not match. Feng probably did not know that she had this side of her before. Her beautiful face did not change, but now the phoenix did not have the same expression as before. The gentle smile, like the spring breeze, hid determination and fierceness, like a general who was about to lead an army into the battlefield and was about to charge in to show off her peerless strength. The space in the temple was slightly distorted. Space and time had undergone an unknown collapse and change. Others might think that something had affected this place, if there was someone who was lucky enough to walk into this place and not go crazy. But this was the statue of the phoenix when she was fully grown. It was 100% restored. Its appearance and charm were still there. As long as one gave a little intelligence and a part of the soul, this statue could become a clone of Feng. Even a statue of this level would contain divine authority and divinity. It was these that distorted the space, time, and rules in the temple. Ordinary people would not be able to see these things. They would go crazy just by looking at them. Even Empyrean gods would be affected, unless they were peak Empyrean gods like them, and the kind of Empyrean gods whose rules were similar to divine authority and divinity. Yin Nuoxing walked around this statue a few times, thinking that something was wrong. She did not notice it back then, but now that she looked at it again, she really felt that something was wrong. if she did not guess wrong. After pondering for a while, Yin floated up and gently landed on the statue's shoulder. She reached out and touched the pair of wings. Buzz! An ancient aura permeated the temple. Yin looked around with a little surprise, then turned to look at the pair of wings again. They were emitting a faint crimson-pink light, and the distortion in the temple slowly returned to normal. The indescribable aura was rising from all directions, turning into streaks of light that swept across the sky and entered the pair of wings. The aura that hovered here was familiar to her, and she could not help but feel a little dazed. The daze only lasted for a short while before Yin came back to his senses. Looking at the pair of wings that were getting brighter and brighter, he silently counted to 5 in his heart. The pair of sparkling and translucent fire wings fell off the back of the statue, and their size also shrank in a few breaths, turning into a palm-sized crimson-pink light ball. Then, they streaked across the sky and landed in his palm. Yin held the ball of light that was as hot as magma and was a little enlightened. So that's how it is. This is the power that she left behind, the carrier of her power in the future. From time to time, the 4 mythological beasts would leave a part of their body and a part of their power behind. It was an unconscious action. According to Feng, and the others, it was just a precaution that would not be used in the future and in the future. It was just an instinctive action. He just did not expect that she had done it once. Jumping down from the statue's shoulder, Yin stood in front of the statue and looked at it. Then, he let out a sigh of relief. Without the pair of wings, the statue looked much more normal. He took a few more glances, and just as he was about to turn around and leave, a clear voice suddenly sounded in his soul. Wow, this is what Feng looked like in the past. So handsome. Is this really her? It feels like there are 2 people. Yin footsteps immediately stiffened, and he almost fell backward on the ground. He only felt that his vision turned black, and he quickly went into the soul world. He saw the flame mansion, and Kai Xia was sitting on the wall, looking at him with her eyes that were as bright as the sun. There was a confident smile on her face, and she was quite beautiful. If she didn't appear at this time, she would be even more beautiful. You hid. Yin couldn't help but frown. Yes, seeing that you were in a daze, I hid when you weren't paying attention. Kai Xia ignored his cold and indifferent gaze, jumped in front of him, and rolled her eyes at him. It turns out that controlling power that you can't control will make you lose your IQ. Even the smart lad has his moments of foolishness. A living person, a living elf disappeared right under his nose, and he didn't even notice it. Yin he was about to say something, but Kai Xia waved her hand first. Oh, by the way, you can't drive me out. When the contract takes effect, you become my shelter. I can come back here at any time. Yin was speechless for a while. Look at your soul. It's in such a bad state. All the filthy and evil things in the world are not on such an exaggerated scale. I just hid for a while. How did you get yourself into this state? Kai Xia saw his body through Yin perception and knew what had happened in the past few days. When she saw the silver-black thing, she couldn't help but sigh. Elves can see the essence of darkness. It's really scary. All the darkness I have seen is not even the tip of the iceberg when magnified 10 million times. What the hell is that? Yin had a strange look on his face. When he was about to say something to brush her off, Kai Xia turned her head and flicked her long blonde hair. You won't say it anyway. I'm too lazy to talk to you. Yin he always talked to himself and stuffed other people's mouths. Now, it was his turn to be stuffed. Chapter 1133. Why do you look so dark when you walk? I know you're dark enough, so you don't have to make yourself darker. This dark temple is really gloomy. It's tattered and dark. How many years has it been since a living creature visited this place? Yeah, I really moved that statue back to the soul world and decorated it. You don't have any objections, right? Feng, it doesn't have any objections either, right? I know. Anyway, she listens to you. If you don't have any objections, she won't have any objections either. You haven't told me what this dark place is for. From a distance, this corridor looks like ink. I'm afraid no one has lived here before. Yeah, you scared an elf to death. Oh, I forgot that you don't talk about such important things. I'm flattering myself. Yin Nuashing. Why didn't he know that Kai Xia could be so talkative? This girl couldn't have forced herself to become a chatterbox because she was afraid of the dark, right? If she was really afraid of the dark, she should go back. Seeing that she still wanted to say something, Yin Nuashing stretched out his hand with sweat all over his face. Stop. Stop talking. He was in such a passive and indifferent state. Almost half of his face was paralyzed. She actually saw his expression. I say, this young lady, if you don't have anything else to do, can you go back and just pretend that you never came out? This place is not as simple as you think, and it's very dangerous to stay by my side. If something really happens to you, we won't be able to see each other for 10,000 years. Let alone 10,000 years. Even 100 million years is considered light. Kai Xia flapped her wings casually. What are you afraid of? I have a contract with you. You can't hurt me. If this place can't hurt you, it can't hurt me. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. Then can you go back quietly? There are more than 10 people at home, but they don't like me. I think I'm not bad looking. Kai Xia looked sad. She took out a mirror from nowhere and looked at herself. Then she stuck out her chest and said, well, I'm as beautiful as a fairy. Perfect. Yin Nuashing was on the verge of breaking down. Even the chaotic elements circling around her were starting to disperse. What's wrong with you today? I don't think you're usually like this. Kai Xia calmed down in an instant. Her sun-like eyes stared straight at him, and she smiled sweetly. Ziyi and the others told me to take good care of you, but I didn't know what to do. You look so scary now, and I don't think I can hug you, so I can only talk nonsense and comfort myself while I'm at it. Yin Nuashing was taken aback. He hadn't thought of that. Well, looking at you like this, I'm a little regretful that I didn't leave. Kai Xia's eyes were filled with tears, and the two pairs of wings on her back shrank. Yin Nuashing, just as he was having a headache, Kai Xia suddenly came over with a sweet smile on her face. But you've only changed on the outside. You look scary, but your heart is still the same. I don't know how to deal with you. Do you want to learn from Xian and the others? Kai Xia teased as she stretched out her slender fingers towards his face. Yin Nuashing looked at her fingers, and his cheeks twitched. He took a small step back and shook his head. Don't mess around. I'm now an energy body. My entire body is surging with chaotic elements. No matter who touches me, they will suffer. If you really want to do something, then go back to the spiritual world or stay 1 foot away from me. Don't touch me. Yin Nuashing sighed. You're so gentle, silly little star. Kai Xia also sighed deeply. To be treated so gently by you, well, forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything. Yin Nuashing, ? He didn't hear the vague words clearly. But Kai Xia had already stopped talking. He looked at her for a while, shook his head, and continued to walk forward. Oh, right. You haven't said what you're doing here. Kai Xia followed up with light steps and asked the question again as if nothing had happened. Taking back my things. Yin Nuashing's voice was cold. He couldn't squeeze out any emotion even if he wanted to. He could only give up and continue to say with a poker face. Before the battle with the elemental stones, I didn't take the seal of chaos with me. At that time, the seal of chaos was suppressed in the depths of the dark shrine. I thought that it's time to take it back after 70 years. Suppress? Suppress what? A powerful life form. The 10 of us, Azure and Fomer of that era worked together to destroy it. But it didn't die immediately. Instead, it entered a strange self-preservation state. We couldn't do any harm to it. We could only use thousands of magic circles and 12 divine power weapons to suppress it in the Dark Shrine's Great Hall, hoping that one day we could kill it. If my calculations are correct, it's already dead after 70 years. So there are 12 divine power weapons in the Great Hall? No, it's just the seal of chaos. The others won't be needed after a period of suppression. And then there's the Chaos Scepter. The Chaos Scepter is my natal divine power weapon. It's sealed in the seal of chaos to strengthen the suppression, but I don't use it often. Instead, it's more convenient to use the Sword of Netherworld and the Chaos Star. Oh, Kai Xia said. Mei Mao turned around and looked at the dark corridor. She shuddered and wanted to go closer. But when she thought of his words, she could only go a little closer and stopped. What if that guy isn't dead? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Huh? Seeing him in a daze, Kai Xia was also stunned. No, you didn't think about what if it wasn't suppressed to death. You've been dead for 70 years. The power of the divine power weapon should be weakened a little because of its master's death. At least part of its power can't be used. This is the information in your memory. I found it when I was bored. Don't tell me it's fake. Yin Nuoxing said. I shouldn't be so unlucky, right? You didn't think of this situation, did you? Yin Nuoxing thought for a while and nodded hesitantly. Because when we suppressed that life form, that thing didn't happen. How could we have thought? Well, that thing would happen. According to the original arrangement, it should be dead. This time, it was Kai Xia's turn to be speechless. She rushed to the front and waved at Yin Nuoxing, who was in a daze. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Go and have a look. It'll be bad if we run out. After saying that, she flew into the depths of the temple. She was right. With the existence of the contract, she was almost the same as Yin Nuoxing. What couldn't hurt Yin Nuoxing naturally couldn't hurt her. So, the aura of silence in the temple didn't affect her. Even if it really ran out, it would have run away long ago. If you rush over now, hey, be careful. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a while. When she saw that the elf had disappeared, she quickly followed. You don't even know the way. Why are you running so fast? Kai Xia said. Yeah. The two idiots flew quickly through the dark temple, bypassing many forks and opening up some collapsed corridors. It was like walking in a maze. After about 10 minutes, they arrived at the gate of the main hall. However, the scene in front of them made Yin Nuoxing squint her eyes. Kai Xia looked at the scene in front of her curiously and found something with her sharp eyes. The gate of the main hall had long disappeared. They could directly see inside the main hall. This was a dim and dark main hall. The aura of darkness was everywhere. The torrent of time hit them in the face. It seemed like a cold wind was rolling out from inside. The soft whispers were the cold wind telling them something. The main hall was in the deepest part of the temple. Logically speaking, it shouldn't have suffered any damage. Even if the periphery collapsed due to the passage of time, it wouldn't affect the inside. However, the main hall in front of them, the black walls were full of cracks. Half of the support pillars arranged along the main hall's passage had been shattered. The black and purple starry sky floor tiles were also broken. The stars in the star field were dim. Only the ceiling was lit by a faint spark. He really likes the starry sky. Kai Xia couldn't help muttering in her heart. The whole main hall was cast with this starry sky color material. The walls, floor, support pillars, and ceiling were all made of this material. However, the damaged parts only had a dark color. There was nothing left. The starry sky was dim. She could roughly imagine that if the main hall was intact, it would be very beautiful. It was a pity that she couldn't see that scene. Perhaps she could find that scene when she went back and looked through his memory? Kai Xia shook her head and carefully glanced at him. Unsurprisingly, she saw a gloomy and cold expression. His face was already cold in this state, and at this moment, it was like a blizzard was about to arrive. Those tattered marks and destroyed scars were all man-made. If she could see it, it was impossible that he couldn't see it. Someone had come to this main hall and caused damage. Perhaps the primal chaos divine seal is still here. Yin Nuoxing's indifferent words made Kai Xia breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that the most dangerous thing had not happened. Last time, in order to chase the two five-elemental origins, they had killed their way into the Yuan Tian clan and caused a big ruckus. If someone had taken the primal chaos divine seal this time, it was likely that their entire clan would have been annihilated. These are all man-made damages. Kai Xia glanced at him cautiously. In fact, when there were some minor damages on the way, she was already mentally prepared. However, at that time, she only thought that someone was lucky enough to reach those places. She didn't expect that someone would break into the main hall of the Dark God Palace. The power of the void and the primal chaos elements that filled this place were enough to kill anyone below the heavenly God realm. Yin Nuashing nodded and walked into the main hall. The main hall that had been dormant for countless years once again welcomed people. The empty main hall reverberated with the whispers of the void echoing in their ears. The dust around their feet gently fluttered with the four rising and falling feet. They could vaguely see black dust mixed in with the yellow sand. That was actually the fine sand of the Dark God Palace. A 10-foot wide hole had been broken in the wall deep in the main hall, and it penetrated to the outside of the Dark God Palace. The wall fragments were scattered all over the ground. There were no traces of the intruder here. Even if he wanted to use the Book of Epics to backtrack, he couldn't do so. The primal chaos elements had imperceptibly destroyed everything here. It was impossible to backtrack, and there were no traces left here. It's broken. The thousands of layers of arrays have all been broken. The traces of destruction left behind in the main hall. There were 6 or 7 things that caused considerable damage here. There was probably a battle, and the Divine Hall was relatively sturdy, so there was only this degree of damage. If it were outside, the sky would have collapsed and the earth would have cracked. Yin Nuashing's palm caressed a broken support pillar. His eyes narrowed slightly. That thing ran out. Kaixia exclaimed in surprise. She looked nervous. Then what do we do? Back then, it took 12 of you to destroy that life. Will be very dangerous? Of course, it's very dangerous. A powerful life form that could make 12 peak divine gods work together to go all out will not be any easier to deal with than a world-class life form. Yin Nuashing nodded and sighed. However, it's useless to think about this. It has already run away. Let's take a look first. He looked around for some traces. Kaixia also hurriedly looked around. Even though she didn't know what they were looking for, she had no problem moving the building fragments on the ground away. The two of them moved the building fragments all over the main hall. A burst of sand surged, and black and yellow sand rolled. Soon, all the building fragments were thrown out of the big hole in the wall. Come and help. Many of the arrangements have been damaged. If we want to open the inner layer and take out the primal chaos divine seal, we need some arrangements, Yin Nuashing said to Kaixia. Oh, Kaixia responded. Under his guidance, she walked to the middle of the 2 support pillars at the entrance of the main hall. And then, what do we do? Yin Nuashing waved his hand to signal her to calm down. His eyes stared at the 36 pillars in 2 rows. He lightly stomped his feet, and the whole main hall trembled slightly. A layer of black light appeared under those pillars, spreading toward the top of the pillars. A thin layer of light also appeared on the dozens of pillars that had been broken. The light just happened to stick to the original position of the pillars, spreading from the bottom of the pillars to the ceiling. After the spreading of the light stopped, the 36 pillars all turned into a state of black and purple, reflecting a complete starry sky. The starry sky seemed to have rolled the entire star field into a pillar. Kaixia looked at this pillar, then at him in a daze. She couldn't help but sigh. This guy's love for star fields really started in his previous life, and it couldn't be changed in this life. She couldn't help but think that his choice of star power in this life was influenced by some kind of will. After all, he hadn't recovered his memory when he transformed into star power. Yin Nuashing blinked. The primal chaos elements lingering around his body turned into a stream of air and rushed out evenly to the top of the 36 pillars. With a faint flicker, the 36 star fields emitted an extremely strong light, as if they suddenly came to life at this moment. Do you see the black stars on those 2 pillars? There is only 1 star. There should be 9 other stars with the light of other elements around it, Yin Nuashing shouted. Kaixia quickly looked around the pillars on both sides. After a while, she found the 2 stars. She nodded and shouted, "Found it! What do you do next?" All the other pillars have the same stars, but the arrangement of the black stars is different. Arrange the stars on the 2 pillars according to the order of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth from left to right. Then, arrange the order of metal, wind, and thunder in the inner circle. Finally, arrange the darkness and light in the middle and let them circle to the right. For the 2 pillars in front, change the order of the outer circle and the middle circle. Further ahead, is the arrangement of the first row. Turn it to the left, switch the inner circle and the outer circle. Except for the light of those two stars, press down the rest. Yin Noashing and Kai Xia were busy on the pillars, but the latter was actually the only one who was panicking. She felt dazzled just by distinguishing the 10 colors. Although she was panicking, she still managed to keep up with Yin Nuashing's speed. As this strange arrangement gradually returned to the right position, she suddenly felt that something that didn't belong to this world seemed to be slowly floating from inside. It was a very strange feeling. She didn't know why she had such a feeling. When the two of them met in the center, Yin Nuashing saw that the poor girl's eyes were dizzy. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Have you arranged it correctly?" Kai Xian nodded leisurely. Seeing this, Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. She looked around the hall and waved her hand in the air. The light in the 36 star fields suddenly became strange. Countless stars twisted, overlapped, and changed shape in the complex changes. They even directly fell apart. All the light transformed into a huge ring of starlight. The light all converged to the 10 stars in the center. The light reflected on the walls, ceiling, and floor of the hall, shining in the center of the hall. Ta! Yin Nuashing stretched out her hand and confirmed that all the light was blooming. Only then did she snap her fingers with her left hand. In the 36 groups of rings, the black star and the golden star suddenly changed positions. Kai Xia's gaze turned from the pillars one by one, and then she couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Transparent and white starlight, along with the 10 colored lights, shone in the center of the hall, connecting into a series of complex light clusters that were constantly changing. It constantly changed shape in the eyes of the two, messy and disorderly, just like a ball of thread. But when the black and golden lights changed, the unknown object that was messy like a ball of thread suddenly froze. Its shape was fixed, and its shape was stable, turning into a jade seal-like object. On a square, there was a chaotic, disorderly, strange object. She didn't even know where to start looking at it. The four sides of the square below were engraved with the same exquisite and mysterious patterns, while the bottom side was full of word-like things. Kai Xia stared at the thing called the Chaos Divine Seal. Looking at the bottom side, she suddenly felt a little dizzy and quickly turned her gaze away. "You hit it so deep?" Yin Nuashing shook her head. The 36 god pillars were included in the 1,000-layer formation. The Chaos Brick and the Chaos Scepter were placed at the center, so naturally they weren't in the real world. Kai Xia dug her ears. "What did you just say was this square thing?" "The Chaos Brick, it's used to lift people's faces and smash the back of their heads." Kai Xia, Yin Nuashing shrugged. "You can either return to the soul world or stand further away. When it's retrieved later, there will be some movement." "Ah, isn't this your thing? Why is there still some movement when it's brought back?" "Nonsense. When I go back to the old house that has been abandoned for 70 years, I still have to think about how to remove the weeds in the courtyard to open a path to the door. When I reach the door, I still have to think of a way to open the door that has been immovable for God knows how many years." "Oh, you call this opening the door? A rusty door," Yin Nuashing said righteously. "Why isn't it broken? Forget it, forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." Kai Xia was speechless and silently stepped back. She didn't want to argue with her, as she felt that she would be exhausted. Yin Nuashing looked at her strangely, spread her hands, and slowly walked toward the Chaos Divine Seal. The latter sensed something and slowly descended from the sky. Chapter 1134. Achoo! The scorching sun of the afternoon shone on the body, and the scorching aura filled the entire space, causing the vision to be slightly distorted. The flying ship that was thousands of miles high in the sky turned into a beam of light and appeared at the end of the line of sight. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared at the other end of the horizon, leaving behind a loud sneeze. The giant birds and magical beasts that were passing by were so shocked that they almost fell from the sky. The purple gold flying ship had a luxurious aura, and flying at full speed for an extremely long time didn't cause any damage to its core. The sneeze that contained the aura of moonlight made the entire ship tremble a few times. Everyone on the ship looked at the white-haired young man sitting on the edge of the ship in shock. They looked up at the sky and were confused. Why would he sneeze on such a hot day? Was he sick? The four divine beasts shouldn't be sick, right? Sneeze. Little White sniffed hard, and the sneeze made the fur on his tail stand up. He rubbed the tip of his nose in confusion and said, "Why do I suddenly feel cold on such a hot day?" Feng, and Little Ching looked at each other and saw some confusion in each other's eyes. Not only them, but they also felt a strange chill in their hearts. It was only for a short while, and it wasn't as bad as Little White's sneeze. "What's wrong?" Xian saw their strange expressions and couldn't help but ask. Feng shook her head and said, "I don't know, it seems like nothing." She then waved her hand and said, "Where are we now?" "We tore space a few times and used small teleportation to cross some distance. We should be in the middle of the sixth state now. We'll be able to cross the next state faster and faster, but we're still a bit far from the third state." Zai replied. Little Ching blinked her eyes and looked at Yi Shi, who was sitting next to her. Yi Shi sensed her gaze, looked up, and shrugged helplessly. "I can't. That magic formation is still being repaired. If we forcefully use it, it will be destroyed, and I can't guarantee where it will teleport us this time." She then muttered in a low voice, "I didn't learn spatial teleportation well in the first place. If brother is done with his business in the Dark God Palace, he can go to the collection point very quickly. After that, he will directly go to the third state where Sandsword is." Ming sighed. Xian shook his head helplessly. "He's too far away. The best outcome is to see him from afar. We might not be able to catch up. It's expected, but we'll still be able to meet him. As for what the situation will be like when we meet him, it's hard to say." Violet Knight shook his head and looked around at the sky. "There's a city not far ahead. Why don't we go down and rest first? The people on this ship are all—" Xian was stunned when he heard this. He turned around and saw Yao Hua, Lin Sheng, and the others lying on the boat, twitching nonstop. Their eyes were rolled back, and their tongues were hanging to the side, as if their brains had gone haywire. I haven't noticed it yet. What's going on?" Xian was shocked. Yi Shi shrank her head and slowly crawled to the side. Before she could crawl a meter, Violet Knight lifted her up. "It's the fault of a low-quality teleportation technique. You guys have been in trouble with Little Star so many times, so you're used to it. They won't be able to take it." Yi Shi's little face was flushed red, and she struggled with all her might. "I just didn't learn spatial teleportation well. So what? I've already told you so many times, but you guys still insist on using it. Take responsibility." Yao Hua, Lin Sheng, and the others. Ugh. The airship stopped more than 100 miles away from the city. The group of people dressed themselves up in the forest. Those who needed to change their clothes changed their clothes, those who needed to dress up, and those who needed to transform into human form. Little Green transformed into human form effortlessly. Little White had to use all his strength to transform into human form. Ever since Yin Nuoxing accidentally mentioned that the four gods had been hunted down in the primitive age, White Tiger had spent most of the day to transform his half-demon form into human form. He hadn't reached maturity yet. At least his form hadn't matured yet. In fact, he couldn't maintain his human form for a long time, but he still managed to transform into human form. Feng felt that it was because he was frightened. "Why do you have to hold your human form for half a day every time you transform?" Yuanxi looked at the white-haired little boy who was touching the place where his tail used to be. He repeatedly checked to make sure that his tail was gone, and only then did he relax. Little White glared at him. Just as he was about to say something, Little Ching squatted down and patted his head. She smiled gently and said, "It'll be fine if you grow up quickly." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at Little White again. They whispered to each other, but their voices could be heard even if they didn't prick up their ears. "So this little thing hasn't grown up yet." Look carefully. Feng, and Little Ching are already this tall, but Little White is still so small. Sure, that's the four gods. Don't talk nonsense. He can grow up however he wants. Little White felt like crying. It still needed a few more years to pass the growth period. After all, he woke up a few years later. Look, these few years had already embarrassed him. Chu Yingzhan looked at the three divine beasts and coughed softly. Ahem, you guys should be careful. I just thought of something bad. What could be worse than my lousy growth period? Little White rolled her eyes at her helplessly. There's a force in the little divine land that has always been entangled with the four gods. It's a derogatory term, and it's most likely not a good thing. Chu Yingzhan scratched her head. I heard about it earlier, but I don't know how to explain it now. There's not enough information. I only heard that it's a pretty big force. Z frowned. It can't be that someone wants to encircle the four gods or something. In this era, the four gods have disappeared for a long time. Little Qing nodded. But they still found us. I was a little worried when we were in the Godfall sky. Maybe they got something we left behind and used it to deduce our location. Feng Er's expression was also serious. It's fine when Xingxing is still here. Hiding by his side and in his spiritual world can shield us from the heavens. What if— Okay, stop talking. Why are you so troublesome? Little White trembled and waved his hand impatiently. Don't scare yourself. It's just a coincidence. Let's hurry up and enter the city. We still have to continue our journey after resting for a while. Everyone looked at the white tiger, trembling every 3 steps as it walked forward. They couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This little white tiger actually had times when it was scared. When they followed the crowd into the city, they were also in a lot of different states. Some walked indifferently, some trembled and spasmed as they walked, and some even went invisible to avoid being squeezed into the crowd like sardines. There were also some who directly chatted with people they didn't know and the guards on the road. Even after everyone safely entered the city gates, Chu Yingzhan was still grabbing the guards and chatting nonstop. Hey, why is the city gate so heavily guarded recently? It wasn't so troublesome to enter the city 2 days ago. We only went out once. Brother, are you thirsty? This is the best immortal tea. It can refresh your mind and relieve tiredness. Oh, what kind of tea is this? I've never seen tea with such a fragrance in my life. Ahem, it's not a big deal to try it. Anyway, it's not wine, so I'll just take a sip. Sigh, you don't say. Recently, the guard duty has been extended a lot, and more guards have been sent here. Those crazy higher-ups in the city are nervous all day long, and I don't know what they're guarding against. They just want us to stand here and report if we see something serious. Although they don't say anything, I think it might be related to the shadow on my mind the day before yesterday. Shadow, it's that dark and swarthy thing, right? Chu Yingzhan cried out in alarm, her face full of nervousness. What's wrong with that inhuman thing? Is he going to attack this place? Oh my God, that's not necessary. The guard waved his hand. I heard that it's someone very powerful. It definitely has nothing to do with us. Now, the security level in the 7 states and beyond has been raised a lot. They didn't say what it is, so I'm just guessing. Don't take it seriously. Don't take it seriously. That's right. Chu Yingzhan giggled and nodded. She chatted for a while longer, and when she saw that more and more people were coming, she took her leave and walked over to the crowd with a smile. Hey, let me tell you, everyone, wasn't this girl's social skills a little too high? On the city walls, a few young men were leaning against the city walls lazily. Their gazes were faintly discernible as they watched a large group of people walking into the city. They didn't pay any attention to them, and their gazes didn't carry any meaning. They knew that there were 2 emperor gods in that group. If they paid too much attention to them, they would be discovered easily. They could only faintly discern their presence. The handsome young man who was lying on the city wall straightened up and stretched. He turned his head to look at the young man in gray robes beside him and said with a faint smile, Brother Qi, is that the target we're looking for? The young man in gray robes walked to the city wall, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. It disappeared quickly. It should be. The heavenly insight mirror can't point us to a worthless target. Besides, karma is not something that can be easily removed. So I'm sure that this group of people— let me think, I seem to have seen them somewhere before. The handsome young man patted the green robes on his body and said, You called us here from so far away. If there is something valuable, it won't be good if we delay. Oh, what are you talking about? We came out to relax. It's boring to stay in the Red Star Academy all day. A young man patted him on the shoulder and laughed. The handsome young man shrugged and turned the black thumb ring on his thumb. I prefer to work efficiently. The young man's gaze turned to his thumb ring, and his eyes were filled with envy. He whispered, "Is this the part of the things that you obtained from the chaotic ruins?" The handsome young man retracted his hand into his sleeve and nodded, as if nothing had happened. "This is the part that my family obtained. Didn't your family pass it down to you? How can we be as generous as your family? Those old men are so stubborn that they won't pass it down to us." The young man laughed bitterly. "They have thousands of reasons. They won't be able to figure out what it is in such a short time. If they don't figure it out, they won't pass it down. They have their own considerations. But in my opinion, some things are just left to collect dust in a corner. It's no different from a decoration." Another young man said, "It's a pity. I heard from my family's elders that they could have left that thing behind, but it escaped. It even made a big hole in the wall. So far, they haven't found it." The handsome young man smiled and looked at the young man with the surname Chi. "Brother Chi, do you see any signs of it? If not, let's get closer." Hearing this, the gray-robed young man let out an inexplicable laugh. "No need. I think I know who they are, and that inhuman thing." He whispered a few words into the young men's ears. They couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The handsome young man's indifferent expression faded. "What you said, is it true? This is a serious matter. Do you want to confirm it again?" "No need. I'm very sure that wherever he is, she will be there. On the other hand, if she is here, then he is most likely here as well. He wasn't a minor character worth recording, so I just recorded him in passing. But this statement is very far-fetched. What I'm really sure of is the last information my brother sent back before he died. It's exactly the same as that inhuman thing." Hearing this, the few of them looked at each other inexplicably. The handsome young man patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry. This information is very useful. You have avenged your brother. Now it's our business. Do we go down directly?" Someone rubbed his hands and laughed evilly. "No hurry. No matter what, there are 2 god emperors there." The handsome young man shook his head. He looked at a young man with a gloomy face and said, "If I can see it, you should be able to see it too, right?" The gloomy young man's body trembled. He looked at him and nodded. "Yes, then you guys go first. No problem. But those few will belong to us. You know that." The gloomy young man said stiffly. The handsome young man grinned. "Go ahead." With this, "I don't believe that the old man won't give it to me when we go back. Because there were too many people in the group. Moving together in such a crowded place was very troublesome. So, they split into a few groups and went to find places to play and rest. Just as they watched the group of people walk to other places, Xiao Qing's glowing green eyes suddenly narrowed. She and Feng looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. "Feng, we've been seen through 2 gazes. Strange. We are already mature, and we use Xing's aura to disguise ourselves. It shouldn't be so easy to be seen through." Not only did they see Xiao Bai, but they also saw us. A special way. Could it be those people? Feng pondered for a while and moved closer to Xian. She whispered, "Xian, the pendant that Xing gave you, is there something in it that you need in case of emergency?" "Eh." Xian, who was sitting in the pavilion and resting with his eyes closed, was slightly stunned. When he opened his eyes and saw Feng Er's slightly serious expression, he suddenly thought of many things. He nodded subtly, took off the pendant, and put it in her hand. This pendant is connected to the space inside his pendant. I took a peek. There are many things inside, but I don't recognize some of them. "Yes, I'll borrow it." Feng nodded and put the pendant on. "Borrow?" Xian smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Zai and Yishi came over and looked at Feng and Little Qing. They frowned. "You also felt that gaze?" You too?" Feng was stunned. Violet Knight nodded. She pretended to tidy her hair and glanced behind her before quickly retracting her gaze. "I sensed it when we entered the city. They're a little cunning. If they'd looked at us less frequently, I might have really been fooled. If you pretend to be too natural, it will be a bit deliberate. I guess they can't hold it in anymore. At least that gaze has a purpose. Yishi waved her wide sleeves. So what are you going to do? Qinyan looked at them. The most powerful people are gathered here. Are they okay? Wow, the girls exclaimed and quickly turned around. They saw her sitting quietly in the corner of the pavilion like a jade statue. They couldn't help but smile bitterly. Why are you here? Qinyan. Zi shook her head. She flicked her finger, and a dark purple spark jumped out from her finger. I'm watching over them. There's no problem. If there's a problem, I can bring you there in a second. As she spoke, she smiled inexplicably and said, after mastering 2 types of super divine flames, I haven't had much practice. I really want to give it a try. I feel like playing with fire. Yes, it's fire. Why don't we burn down this city? The more she talked, the more perverted her expression became. Her pretty face was flushed, and the small flame between her fingers became a blazing flame. Feng, and the others were horrified. Even Xian, who knew that she was just joking, couldn't help but sigh. Being close to a little star makes me want to destroy things. As expected, being close to a little star makes me crazy. Everyone agreed. Little Qing patted the green robe on her body and was about to sit down in the pavilion. Mei Mao flashed. Where is Little White? Wasn't White Tiger here just now? Ziyi turned her head. Xiaobai was standing at the entrance of the pavilion just now, but now he was gone. However, she was not in a hurry. Don't worry, I left a wisp of flame on everyone's body. Little White went that way. Sister Zai? Bing Air pointed in a direction. Seeing that Zai was stunned, Zai couldn't help but look over. Wow, Jinx! Zai exclaimed. Ziyi cried out in alarm, startling Ziyin and the others as well. From his expression and tone, there was an 80% chance that there was a problem. However, was there a need for something to happen so quickly? They had just entered the city not long ago, and it wasn't late yet. However, now wasn't the time to talk about this. The group stood up. Zai was about to rush over with her people, but suddenly stopped. Ming and Feng stepped forward and protected Xian and Qinyan behind them. Ming's cold voice echoed outside the pavilion. Are you planning to attack in the city? Zai was stunned. She glanced at this angel and couldn't help but sigh. This little angel was really straightforward. She directly said that she was going to attack. Lan Shiner stood back and leaned against Xian and the others. Her aura slowly merged into the void. The power of space silently sealed this space, guarding against any sneak attacks from any direction. Your perception is not bad. Faint laughter came from the back of the building and a short tree. Figures walked out unhurriedly. It seemed that they had no intention of launching a sneak attack or attacking immediately. They surrounded the pavilion. Their vague momentum surrounded the space, causing the space to be slightly distorted. Ziyin and the others all looked slightly serious. They quickly glanced at the people coming from all directions. There were 16 people in this group, but they had sent out nearly twice as many people to deal with the 9 of them. Ziyi and Yi Shi's gazes swept across this group of people and landed on the 3 middle-aged men opposite them. They were a little wary. They had actually sent out 3 strong practitioners of the Emperor God Realm. The rest were also strong practitioners of the God Realm or the King of Hell Realm. Based on their understanding of the small divine lands over the past few days, these 16 people were not a weak force. Ziyin grabbed Hong Ming's hand. The holy energy contained in this stupid angel's body was about to explode. With the amount of energy she had just released, it was possible for her to kill a few Hell Kings. Seeing how they were acting so leisurely, as if they were trying to catch a turtle in a jar, they probably thought that they had it in the bag. Taking advantage of this short period of time, the little angel's explosive speed was enough to get rid of a few of them. God Emperors couldn't defend against the super concentrated energy of an energy body just by relying on their physical strength. They could only use energy to defend themselves. Wait for a moment. Xian's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Ming nodded slightly, and the energy in his body became denser. I don't remember offending anyone, Zai said faintly. Wisps of dark purple flames spread into the ground and into the depths of the earth. Then, They quickly spread out in all directions. I also don't know which stupid force in the small divine prefecture would casually send out such a force. It hasn't even been half an hour since you guys discovered us, so I guess you guys must be very important in the small divine prefecture. Forgive us for not knowing much about the small divine prefecture, but we can only guess that you guys are from the 6 Idle Clouds gates. Yishi narrowed her eyes and muttered to herself in her soul, 2 late-stage god emperors and 1 early-stage god emperor. They should be around the 2nd rank. Zai and I can deal with one, Xener can deal with the early-stage one, and the rest, wait, I have an idea. Over at Little White's side, Yuanshi's side is also in trouble, but they aren't as strong as the ones we encountered. We have to quickly deal with them and go help. Later, Yi Shi, activate the array. Don't care about the impact. Activate it as strong as you can. I want the entire city to be in an uproar. Ming, Feng, start a fire. We'll burn this place down. Everyone else, use your full strength. Ming and Feng's cheeks twitched. Your senses are sharp, and your idea is good. However, we don't have an answer, and we don't have any special evil intentions towards you. The 3 god emperors chuckled. Their gazes shifted from Zai and Yishi to Feng, and Shaoqing. This time, we're here for these 2 lords. Feng and Shaoqing's eyes flashed. So, they were really here for them? Oh, I forgot. It's not just you. Of course, we didn't miss out on that lord. Judging from his characteristics, he's the white tiger of the moon, right? One of them chuckled. I didn't expect that the 4 divine beasts of this era would all appear together. After 2 eras of hibernation, I thought that you would appear later. For example, hide until this era is over or something. Feng took a step forward. Do you need to use this kind of power to deal with us? It's useless to say more. We're just following orders. If you follow us obediently, you won't end up badly. Otherwise, not just you. Your little friends don't have such sharp senses. I'm afraid. The God Emperor, standing in the middle, glanced at Feng expressionlessly. Zai crossed his arms in front of his chest and raised his chin. What if I say no? Then don't blame us for being unreasonable. Hearing this, a trace of pity appeared on the faces of the 3 god emperors. They shook their heads, and at the same time, there was a trace of impatience in their eyes. We don't have time to talk nonsense with you. You either obey or die. F***CK them. Zai roared. Dark purple flames surged out from every inch of the space like a reverse ocean. The temperature was so terrifying that it was enough to burn down the laws, and it directly set the houses thousands of meters away on fire. In any case, there was no one within a radius of thousands of miles. Yi Shi and the others also roared. All kinds of energy surged out. Sacred golden flames, cyan flames, crimson pink, and dark blue flames mixed in this dark purple ocean. There was also the violent power of space, the power of 5 elements, and Bing Air's ice storm. The entire space became a pot of thick soup that surged out with a rumble. Seeing Zai and the others launch an attack, the 3 god emperors sneered. They casually raised their hands and formed an energy barrier. The others' figures flickered and rushed into the sea of flames. Strange weapons appeared one after another, forming a dark red barrier. It seemed like they were weapons that were used to defend against the flames. Punk. However, when that huge pot of violent energy surged out, the energy of the entire heaven and earth also went berserk. The space and laws boiled. The sea of energy directly broke through all the barriers and drowned those who tried to rush into the sea of flames. The 3 god emperors' expressions changed drastically. The aura of destruction of the laws that covered the sky and earth made them pale. However, before they could save people or mobilize the power of laws to defend themselves, the sea of flames drowned them with unparalleled power. The power that was enough to destroy the laws completely annihilated the 3 of them from the inside out. Punk. A huge storm of energy and flames swept into the sky. The destructive shockwaves spread out in layers, annihilating everything within 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles. The extremely violent energy made those in the city who did not know what was going on look over in horror. Zai clapped his hands. You didn't even use the power of laws. You're really courting death. Just a trace of it is enough to take your life. Let's go. It's time to find those idiots. Let's capture that stupid white tiger first. Chapter 1135. The walls of the narrow alleyway were painted with the graffiti of an unknown family's child. The childish patterns, simple lines, and rough shapes were filled with childlike innocence. It was easy to tell what it was. There was a large tree in the alleyway. It was so crooked that one of the walls was slightly tilted. The ground was bursting with its roots. Green leaves and branches swayed in the wind, rustling. Some green leaves fell from the tree and twirled in the air before landing on a patch of white hair. Little White plucked the green leaves from his head and scratched his hair. He lazily hugged the back of his head and walked aimlessly into the alleyway. He didn't know where the alleyway led to, nor did he plan to go anywhere. He was just casually strolling around. He really enjoyed this kind of silence. Occasionally, he would think of the tranquility of the sleeping mountain range. It was just that it was too quiet right now. He knew why it was so quiet. A few sneaky little mice wanted to challenge the king of beasts. A king should have the magnanimity of a king. How would he not give them a chance? So he slipped out. He also knew that there should be people waiting for them on the other side. He could probably take some people with him if he slipped out. He hoped that he could take some people with him. However, he also knew how violent those people were. Actually, there was no need for him to do so. Maybe he just wanted to play. Maybe that was the case. If he wanted to play, then so be it. He wasn't a little brat that needed to be protected. As long as he didn't go overboard, it was fine. He also believed that it wouldn't be that easy to go overboard. Otherwise, he wouldn't have run out. It was hard to say what the enemy was, but they were probably coming for the four gods. That lunatic said that in the ancient era, there were people who surrounded the four gods. Maybe these people were the same. The four gods of heaven and earth had too many treasures on them. It was normal for them to be coveted. He thought that he would be even angrier when he found out about this. He didn't expect that he would be used to it. Maybe the things that happened in the ancient era had already become instinctive memories that were branded into his blood. What kind of attitude did he have to look at this matter now? Anger a little. He would naturally be angry if he was treated as prey, but it wasn't as serious as he imagined. Hatred? Disgust? There seemed to be some, but it was faint. It was more like used to it. It was very scary. He had actually gotten used to this kind of thing. How many times had he experienced it before he could get used to this kind of terrifying thing? Had it happened so many times that it could be compiled into a record? In a certain era, in a certain year, in a certain month, the success or failure of killing the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Phoenix, and Black Tortoise, how many people died, what damage was caused, what was left behind, and what was promoted. The four gods themselves were responsible for maintaining the stability of the world, as well as the stability of the laws of the god realm. Just like that lunatic, they wandered about outside the world, quietly observing the development of the world. At most, they would occasionally enter the world to play around, but it wouldn't affect anything. Who would have thought that they would be treated like this? Thinking about it made them even angrier. It seemed like that lunatic was the same as well. The four of them were probably the most pitiful world-class life forms. They might as well learn from that lunatic and go crazy. That way, they would become the other world-class life forms. They had no sentience and were violent and tyrannical. Their goal was to destroy the entire god realm. Perhaps they could sense the filth in this world and could not help but want to destroy it. Why did that psycho want to stop this operation? Didn't he hate this world as well? I don't understand. He's such a tsundere. His words are so hateful and his hatred is so deep, but his actions are more ruthless than anyone else's. What a headache. His ears suddenly trembled a few times. He knew that now was not the time to think about such things. Whoosh! A huge shadow suddenly appeared in the sky, covering the small alley and Whitey. It carried with it a unique aura that caused even space to tremble. The moment the shadow appeared, a five-colored net-like object fell from the sky and instantly pressed down on the alley, crushing the space and shattering the walls and the ground. Large amounts of dust and dirt were sent flying. The rumbling tremors slowly died down, for figures walked out of the smoke, step by step. Their footsteps echoed faintly with the faint rumbling echoes. Are they dead? Those are the four gods. How could they die just like that? It's already good enough that they were bound by the god-binding rope. The god-binding rope was forged with the power of the four gods. It has a very strong restraining effect on them. It should be useful. The fourth person didn't say anything. He waved his sleeves, and the dust in the air gradually dispersed. The visibility gradually increased. The weapon, forged with the power of the four gods, interfered with their senses. They could only use their eyes to determine whether they had caught the target or not. It was actually very dangerous. As the fastest white tiger on the continent, his speed was comparable to the light element. The sense of danger lingering in his heart didn't dissipate at all. The moment the dust dissipated, he saw a five-colored net on the ground. However, he didn't see any living creatures. His vigilance made him immediately shout, "Careful!" The god-binding rope didn't hit the target. The instant his voice fell, a moon-white figure abruptly appeared before his eyes. That young and tender face was reflected before his eyes. Blue patterns that were filled with wildness covered the face, and disheveled white hair fluttered in the wind. In his hand was a strange talisman that was around 3 meters in size. It was beautiful and mysterious like a crescent moon, and a terrifying, oppressive feeling descended upon him, causing his face to go ghastly pale. His vision seemed to slow down. Everything seemed to slow down. The falling leaves and dust slowed down. His senses also slowed down. However, his mind was still clear. He could even sense that this space had slowed down. However, he couldn't move his body. If I were you, I would have retreated when I cast the net. A hunter who makes a mistake will become the prey. A voice as cold as moonlight sounded in his ears. That strange azure talisman wasn't affected by the time stagnation. No, that talisman was the reason for the time stagnation. In a flash, it followed the youth's fist and smashed into his body. Bang! It was as if a battering ram had smashed into a city gate. The fourth person was suddenly smashed into ashes by the talisman. The talisman's power sent him flying along with a wall. The other 3 people were also shocked. A bright light came from their chests as if they were activating something. The white light emitted a very familiar energy that made Little White's eyes narrow. Moon God, luminous moon seal. Little White shouted in shock. The azure talisman in his hand suddenly spun and rushed toward the 3 people. The bright moonlight contained an energy that made their faces turn pale. Boom! The luminous moon seal smashed through the wall and exploded, creating a huge crater in space. The weak power of the divine right burned them to ashes with a light tremble. Just like the fourth person, only a little bit of ash was left on the ground. Little White clapped his hands and muttered to himself, 5 seconds. A bit slow. They looked at the thing called God-binding rope that was created with their power. Just as he was about to take it, a white light suddenly shot out from the place where the luminous moon seal exploded, causing his expression to tremble. It was also in this moment of shock that the person's figure suddenly rushed toward the horizon, escaping without a trace. Little White frowned. Just as he was about to chase after him, he paused and sneered, "Although I'm very surprised that you didn't die. Do you think you can still run?" After saying this, he ignored the guy who was running for his life and picked up the God-binding rope that was 3 meters long and wide. His tiger eyes flashed. This thing that was called a rope, but was actually a net, did indeed have the power of the 4 of them, and it was even purer than their current power. He guessed that it might be something left behind from his previous life that was found by someone and made into this thing. Moreover, the energy was a bit mottled. It was a fusion of many kinds of energy, and there was only a little bit of the power of the 4 gods. This could only be a part of it, a mass-produced toy, and not the main body. In other words, probing. The attack this time was just a test. Little White muttered to himself. With a pinch of his small hand, he crushed the God-binding rope into pieces. If he was really trapped by this thing, he might temporarily lose his ability to move. Even if it was a cheap mass-produced toy, this was the case. If the main body appeared, they might really be caught. When did the humans create such a dangerous thing? Little White frowned. Just as he was feeling a bit shocked, a black shadow drew a parabola in the sky like a rock and heavily smashed at his feet. He collected his expression and glanced at it. It was the guy who had just run away. Of course, he had died and was burned into a piece of charcoal. Several shadows suddenly appeared in the open space. One after another, they walked out from the shadows. Little White had just kicked the charcoal and was about to say something when Z.E. quickly walked up and fiercely gave him a slap on the head. "Can you not run around?" Little White grimaced in pain and fiercely rolled his eyes at her. "Aren't I pulling away to see what kind of tricks they have?" As he spoke, he threw a piece of the five-colored god binding rope in his hand to little Ching. "Look at this." Violet Knight leaned over to take a look and quickly understood what was going on. "Something that stole your power? Also, I'm afraid it's something used to restrain us." Fong nodded, her pretty face a bit serious. The people who came this time were probably just probing. Maybe they let their guard down. But next time, they won't be so easy to deal with. Xian took the piece of the god binding rope and looked at it. He casually threw it away and looked at Ziyi. "Call everyone and let's hurry up and leave. If they dare to directly attack here, then they'll dare to use even more despicable methods." "No problem." Ziyi casually waved her hand. "Little Yin, you'll have to give up on some of your kindness when you follow Little Star. Ha! If they dare to do anything in the city, then I'll dare to live in Inferno City." Xian was speechless. After all, this was a divine flame. Even if she had a body, her nature hadn't changed. Since ancient times, divine flames had destroyed many cities. In previous eras, if something happened to a divine flame ranked at the top, it would be a sign of a natural disaster. She didn't care about such things. I heard from Little Star that Z almost created a sun and roasted the entire god realm when she woke up in this life. How dangerous. Noticing her strange gaze, Z sighed and lightly flicked her jade finger in front of her forehead, then looked at the others. "Let's go. We've caught the stupid tiger. Let's gather at the north gate." Yi Shi and Exant have already gone to meet up with the others, so there shouldn't be any danger. Xiaobai was about to explode when he heard the word "stupid tiger," but Xiao Qing held him down with a slap. "And let's go." The monstrous might of the entanglement between the flames and the energy storm was accompanied by shock waves that spread out in all directions, blowing the buildings and the ground into the sky or shattering them on the spot. Everyone in the city was shocked, and almost everyone fled out of the city with their lives on the line. The city instantly became chaotic, and the few youths standing on the city walls could not help but cry out in surprise. Those were cries of surprise with laughter and playfulness. Whoosh! The vanguard fell flat on his face. The handsome young man looked at the gloomy young man, whistled, and laughed. The latter looked at him and shook his head. "I underestimated those two god emperors. That's not all. Even the other people who were on the mission died prematurely. Those guys who just became divine children aren't simple. I feel a strange feeling from them." The carefree young man spun in a circle and spread his hands in an exaggerated manner. Although they were killed by the two people who went to support them, a group of divine children is enough to kill a divine emperor. TSK, TSK. The handsome young man twirled a ring on his thumb and laughed eerily. "There's even a divine flame." "Yes, but I can't tell which divine flame it is. Could it be one of the top 10 divine flames that have been lost? But I can't recognize those either. There's the smell of the true phoenix fire, but it's very faint. There's a lot of chaotic energy that's been sucked into it and messed up the aura of that divine flame. It's very difficult to find the true appearance of that divine flame," the gloomy young man said indifferently. "It's just two divine flames. This group of people has a lot of things. The young man with the surname Qi looked at him and sighed. He said indifferently, "Dong Ming, I have to remind you that it's best not to underestimate that group of people." "Oh." The handsome young man looked at him playfully. Even you guys are afraid of them. We've fallen so many times that it's like we've seen a ghost. The young man with the surname Chi had a serious expression on his face. It's true that we're interested in him. When we first came into contact with him, we used a power that he definitely couldn't resist. In fact, after he came into contact with our Chi family, the power we used grew stronger and stronger. But in the end, even a God Emperor powerhouse was defeated. At that time, he was only a demon rank powerhouse. There's definitely something fishy about that guy. When a handsome young man heard this, his expression also became serious. He thought for a while and nodded. Is that so? I'll take your advice. Don't worry. Since it's our turn to act, we won't let them escape. Dongming smiled and was about to turn around and leave when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. I wanted to temporarily turn the page. I didn't think that there would be someone so impatient. He grinned and looked outside the city walls. The world was empty, and there were only a few frightened people running out of the city. It's fine if we can't see the main character for a while. Let's play with Little Dish first. When they heard this, they looked at each other and were all stunned. The young man with the surname, Chi, seemed to have realized something. He looked at Dongming with a strange expression. Could it be that you guys, I think they came out for a walk? Who knows? Dongming shook his head helplessly. At this moment, the city was in chaos. Because no one was controlling the aftermath of the energy, it kept circling around that piece of land. Seeing that the energy storm was getting more and more intense, everyone in the city fled with all their might. The city was in chaos. Almost everyone was running towards the east gate, which was the furthest away from the energy storm. It wouldn't be easy to catch up to them. The culprit who caused all this was now leisurely humming a little tune beside the north gate. Her light purple eyes were looking at the energy storm, and she even had the mood to add fuel to the fire, making it even more explosive. Little Ching looked at the energy storm that was 100,000 feet tall and had already swept out for more than 10,000 miles. She couldn't help but say, "It's about to reach Molten Fire City. It's already half-burned." Fonger sighed. That flame and energy storm were mixed with their energy. Who knew what would happen in the end? Logically speaking, there should be some strong masters in the city. Why didn't anyone come out to resolve the situation? Xian smiled bitterly and didn't stop her. That master might not necessarily care about her. At this moment, they were standing there, waiting for the rest of the people in the city to gather here. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have gone too far in such a short time. However, it had been 10 minutes, and no one had come. The Soul Seed hadn't sent any urgent news either. After waiting anxiously for 3 to 4 minutes, when Xian's uneasiness was about to reach its peak, several figures descended from the sky. It was Yuan Shi, Lin Sheng, and the others who had been wandering around the city. Wow, you guys made quite a commotion. Yao Hua put his hand on his forehead and looked into the distance, grinning. What took you so long? Xian wiped the sweat off her forehead and hurriedly asked, Don't mention it. Yishi's face was covered in sweat. She pointed her wide sleeve at Little Purple Soul and the other 2 girls, who were chuckling with their heads lowered. These 3 little ones ran around and got lost. I couldn't catch them. Xian was stunned. She looked at Little Purple Soul. The little girl looked up at her and jumped into her arms. She rubbed her chest a few times before stopping, looking very obedient. It's no use pretending. I remember. Yishi's face was covered in sweat. Xian was very curious about what this little girl had done to make Shi reveal such an ashen expression. Little Purple Soul pinched Xian's cheek and said, Little Purple Soul is very obedient. I saw the bad guys running away, so I went after them. Huh? Xian was confused. She really went after them. Yuan Shi wiped the sweat off his forehead and laughed dryly. This little girl dragged a strong Emperor of Hell back, like she was catching a chicken. She slapped him so hard that his 7 souls and 6 spirits were scattered. I'm afraid he won't be reincarnated in this life. This little girl is the one who hides her strength. Mr. Nightmare, who had watched the whole thing, recalled the scene with lingering fear. I've never seen a high-ranking god so weak. The power that could shake stars and shatter the void was as weak as a newborn baby's in front of that little fist. Boom! The high-ranking god was smashed into 7 or 8 pieces. Even his body's defense was as fragile as a million-year-old tree. It was crushed with a gentle squeeze. The blood, the white, flowed all over the ground. Children are here. Can you not say such things? Chu Yingxian glared at him. Nightmare wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, "This little girl did it. It's a tragedy." Everyone was speechless. Ziyi waved her hand and said, "All right, let's not talk about it. Let's run first. I don't think it's safe at all." Everyone nodded. She waved her hand and pulled the group onto the purple-gold flying ship. With a loud bang, the ship disappeared into the horizon at an exaggerated speed. It then rushed into the void again. Its speed was so fast that it almost caused everyone to be thrown off their feet. Yuanxi looked at little purple soul, Xihua, and Shiyun who were huddled together. He couldn't help but murmur, "I feel that these 3 little girls are very powerful. Much more powerful than us." "That's 2 space creatures. One what?" Nightmare scratched his head and said, "It's been so many years. Why hasn't little purple soul grown?" Xingxing mentioned longevity, souls, and the world. He might have felt something from little purple soul, but he couldn't say it out loud. Feng hugged the little girl tenderly and patted little Magic, who had been inseparable from the little girl since some time. She said, "I can't see through it either. This little girl is the most mysterious one." Ziyi sighed and looked worried. "Speaking of which, I've been feeling uneasy since the beginning. I have a bad feeling." "Stop talking." Everyone was shocked. Boom. As soon as he said that, a violent impact suddenly descended. The entire airship and the surrounding space shook violently. The black space trembled and a strange phenomenon appeared. It was like the precursor to the collapse of the space. "Oh, I've lost control of the space force. My space shield has been broken by a stronger force." Lan Xin, Er's face was pale. She had lost control of the space force. The control of space was tilting in another direction quickly. "Jinx! Ziyi, you jinx! Why did you learn from Brother Nua's jinx?" "Ah!" Yishi shouted. Ziyi was so anxious that he was about to burst into flames. 2 minutes. I'll lose control of the space in 2 minutes at most. We'll be forcefully pulled out of the void. I think the enemy might have mastered the power of space," Sheer said calmly as she hugged her sister. "What is the transcendent power of space?" Everyone was confused. "Brother, that kind of power, that kind of—" Sheer waved her hand anxiously. They couldn't fight against that kind of power. Even if they had mastered the power of space, the enemy was a supernatural being. His power was much higher. Yishi's face was pale. "A god-level master. All right, he used this kind of power after testing us. Half of the people here couldn't withstand this kind of power. Oh, you all go hide in Yi-Shi's spiritual world. We'll take care of this. Go in. Don't stay here and cause trouble." "Feng, give me little star's pendant," Ziyi shouted. Feng was stunned. She quickly took off the pendant and threw it to Ziyi. "Be careful. Go. Hurry up and go." Yishi quickly opened the door of her spiritual world and put all the little guys in. However, Shier, and Lan Xener stayed. The 3 of them were the most proficient in the power of space. They were fighting desperately for the pendant. It was impossible. They could only try to stabilize their space. Ziyi blinked. She held the edge of the airship and looked at the 3 of them. "Later, you all will do this, and then this." Lan Xener, Shier, and Shier were speechless. "You look so funny when you dance." Chapter 1136. The darkness of the void had faded slightly, and space and order were gradually appearing around the purple-gold flying ship. A powerful force locked onto the position of the ship and violently pulled it out of the void. That force was enough to crush the rules, space, and even the void, but it was not in a hurry to make a move. No matter how far the purple-gold ship flew, it would be able to find it in an extremely short amount of time. This was a sign of trust in its own strength. At the same time, this part of the void became more and more turbulent under the disturbance of that powerful force. colors gradually appeared, and space and void came into contact for a short period of time. All kinds of strange shapes appeared, and blurry spots symbolized that the ship was about to fall into the real world along with this part of the void. A person who could control the power of the void could skillfully magnify or shrink the slight changes in the void by 10,000 times. It was unknown whether the powerful enemy was really confident in his own power or just wanted to be safe, but he did not rush into the void rashly. Instead, he chose to slowly pull his target out as if he was showing off his great power. Shi Xiao and Shi Yin put their palms together, and a silver-blue light shone from their bodies onto the purple-gold flying ship. Yishi held 4 or 5 overlapping magic arrays in one direction, while Zai had 4 or 5 types of flames in her hands. The power of the disturbance of the rules was surging wildly, and Lan Xe continued to maintain the stability of the void. In fact, at this point, there was no need to maintain the void. It was only a matter of time before the void was broken into the real world. If the enemy had not been worried that it would lose its target when it rushed into the void, they would have already engaged in close combat. This was a cautious enemy, an extremely powerful one at that. This was the first time they had faced a god-level master, and without that person, their hearts would always feel empty. Even though Zai knew that theoretically, at this moment, she could fight against a god-level master, she still felt a little uneasy. However, it was not very serious. She had faced many god-level masters when she was following Shadow Emperor. It was just that it had been a long time, and she was a little nervous. Xian, Yishi, it's up to you. Almost 2 seconds after Zai spoke, a large blurry scene began to appear around them. The space twisted into a vortex, and it looked like a scene that was about to wake up from a nightmare. Behind the vortex, there was a monstrous, tangible energy, and a huge sense of oppression passed through the space and almost imprinted on their faces. Now, Z shouted and crushed the sparks in his hand. The silver-blue light on Shi Chun and Shi Yi's bodies scattered into the air. Lan Xian and Yi Shi also detonated the energy in their hands. The void around the purple-gold airship was like a huge square rock that had suddenly collapsed from a cliff, revealing a medium-sized hole in the void. The square rock was then captured by the distorted space around the purple-gold airship and dragged into the real world. Silver-blue and dark purple energies madly poured into the square rock, holding it in front of the airship. Boom! An overwhelming torrent of energy surged out of the space vortex, and many high-energy torrents hit the void across the space. They seemed to be the energy impact of a high-level god, and the god-level master was still dragging them into the real world. Before they could get out of the void, thousands of soldiers and horses had already been arranged outside. With the god-level master leading them, there was no need to worry about them escaping. When they were captured, the god-level master was already prepared outside. Fortunately, all the energy burst out from the vortex in front of them. After experiencing a series of friction between the void and the real world, the airship stopped abruptly. At this moment, it was like a target, but this target was covered with a layer of cloth, so the people outside could not see whether their attacks were effective or not. They could only bombard it with all their might. A large amount of colorful energy formed an energy curtain and rushed out of the space vortex. Almost all the energy hit the square rock in the void. The square rock had the characteristics of the void, and it had been carefully modified by 3 people who were proficient in the power of space. All the energy hit the square rock, and there was not even an aftershock. Instead, it splashed a large number of strange, colorful lines on the surface of the black square rock. The energy was all swallowed by this strange, square rock, but it was not annihilated by the void. Wait for a while more. Z pressed Shi Lai's little head. Shi Lai nodded, and the silver-blue light in her eyes was very dazzling. So was Shi Lai. Although the 2 space beings had not reached the level of great success, the damage they could cause when they worked together was definitely not something an ordinary god could underestimate. The 2 of them even slowed down the god-level master's control of the void and space. Continue to pour energy. Don't be in a hurry to fight back. Wait until we are completely dragged into the real world, Zee said, and suddenly opened her closed fist. She lie and the others nodded. This should be enough to kill the others. Leave that god-level mastered me. If there are any fish that escapes the net, you guys, before she could finish her words, an even more rapid energy shock wave gushed out from the space vortex, like a raging wave crashing into the void cube. This time, the shock wave was clearly many times more violent than the previous one, and the energy contained a weak high divinity energy. That divine expert finally found the time to wave one or two energy torrents into the void, wanting to break down their defense. Buzz, buzz! Nearly half of the energy in the energy curtain rushed to other places in the void, and only half rushed into the cube, causing layers of ripples to appear on the surface of the black cube. The gorgeous colors were distorted, and Shilai couldn't help but exclaim, This won't break down prematurely, right? Did you see the right time? It can't hold on any longer. If it absorbs too much energy, it might explode prematurely. Yishi's little face was full of sweat, and her anxious voice drilled into Ziye's ears. Wait a little longer, it's about time. Violet Knight took a deep breath and waited patiently for a few seconds. She curled the fingers of her right hand one by one, and the moment her 5 fingers closed, she shouted, F***CK them. Lon Xner, who was maintaining the stability of this space, was already sweating profusely. When she heard Ziye's words, she immediately withdrew all of her spatial power, and the speed at which the void was replaced by the real-world space almost doubled. Countless distorted images appeared around the void and quickly returned to normal. The 2 little girls, Shilai and Shilai, also shouted softly and pushed with their young hands. The void cube rushed forward against the huge energy impact, and countless energy waves crashed into its surface. Its capacity was close to its limit. A dark purple light flashed under Ziye's slightly lowered eyelids. She slowly opened her overlapping hands, and a diamond-shaped golden crystal appeared in her palm. The crystal was only the size of a thumb, and the light it emitted was extremely unstable. The energy inside had been completely activated, and the entire crystal became unstable. The energy contained in the crystal made the stable space of the real world show signs of collapse again. Yishi took a look and sucked in a breath of cold air. Wow, you're crazy. She only had time to say that one sentence before Ziyi threw the diamond-shaped crystal into the void cube that was crazily surging. She wrapped her hands around the 2 little girls and pulled them into her arms. Yishi also quickly jumped off the ship with Lon Xiner. Of course, she knew what that small diamond-shaped crystal was. When they were in the Golden Forest, Yin Nuoshing had told them about it. Although this crystal was not as big as the one he had taken out, its power was definitely not weak. Let's go. Ziyi cried out and reached out with her hand. She didn't even look at what weapon she had grabbed. She used all her strength to tear open a black hole that was about 3 meters wide. She used all her strength to cooperate with the God Park weapon, but she only managed to open a small hole. Her face was already covered in sweat, and her body was swaying slightly. Yishi quickly pulled her into the crack in the void. Just as they had time to put up a barrier of order, a blinding light came from behind them. That terrifying light could even illuminate the void. An earth-shattering energy was about to be released. Anyway, she didn't dare to look back. Even if she knew that the scene behind her would be very beautiful, she didn't dare to look back. She was afraid that if she looked back, she wouldn't be able to escape. When the light was so dazzling that even the darkness of the void couldn't cover it, the distorted space suddenly returned to normal. An object was emerging from the void. The people outside stopped pouring energy and grasped the energy in their hands. They inhaled and exhaled an astonishing aura as they stared at the object that was constantly emerging. A black hole seemed to have drilled out of the void, and it kept expanding. Gorgeous colors appeared in the void, causing everyone to be stunned. They looked at each other in dismay. In their understanding, the void should have no color. That divine spirit expert waved his hand and was about to give an order when he suddenly felt a cold current enter the soles of his feet and rush up to the top of his head, causing him to shudder. In contrast, he had never felt such a feeling in his 2 or 3 years of life. It was as if he was being swallowed by an endless abyss. Coldness and madness spread around him. The void kept expanding, and the pure black void was suddenly dyed with a bit of golden light. The golden light was very dazzling, and that space was like a golden sun that suddenly lit up in a colorful galaxy. It was extremely dazzling, so dazzling that it was as if space was being distorted and the void was collapsing. It was terrifying. That divine spirit expert turned pale with fright. His divine power broke out of his body uncontrollably and covered a part of the world. He reacted in an instant, but he didn't have the luxury of escaping. He had already been caught, locked in by a higher power. He couldn't escape from this space, no matter how hard he tried. "Quick, defend! Quick!" His horrified voice had just sounded a few syllables when that golden sun suddenly shrank, as if the sun was collapsing. The wild energy that was enough to shake the barrier of the primordial realm was completely ignited in an instant. The spreading golden light carried a violent energy that could destroy everything and rushed in all directions. The unparalleled energy arched out a golden sphere on the ground, and 12 energy shock waves burst out in succession. They swept out in the direction of the golden sphere of destruction, flattening the earth, time, and space. Boom! It was only after a few tenths of a second that the world-shaking rumble of destruction was unleashed, accompanied by a crashing sound. That was the sound of space shattering and time collapsing. Looking from afar, one could see a golden sun slowly rising from the horizon. It was so huge that it filled one's entire field of vision, and the sky seemed to be burning. 12 layers of shock waves tore apart the clouds and space together, and with every inch that spread, an inch of space collapsed into the void. It was as if the void was crazily spreading before one's eyes, spreading from afar to near at a speed visible to the naked eye. The violent energy rumbled and spread out for hundreds of thousands of miles. The crazily gathering energy attracted the power of heaven and earth in the surroundings. It was as if it had a substantial weight. The ground that was affected collapsed and shattered, and it was collapsing toward the gathering point of destruction. The ground turned into a circle of quicksand and was still sinking. The ground within a radius of 1,000,000 miles had already sunk by a few hundred miles out of thin air, forcibly blasting the ground into a basin. Compared to the violent energy that had become substantial, the shock waves spread to an even further place, bringing along the shattered sky as if they wanted to rush to the end of the world. Along the way, it had affected countless cities and attracted the attention of countless people. A fireball appeared on the horizon, ignoring the limit of the speed of light, and the entire world fell into the void. Dong Ming and the others had just flown out of the city to see the result when they were greeted by a terrifying shock wave that spread through the void. It gave them a head-on blow, and they were sent flying for tens of thousands of miles by the chaotic shock waves before coming to a stop. The youth surnamed Chi spat out a large mouthful of blood. They had just left the city and weren't under the protection of the barrier. They didn't have time to defend themselves, and they didn't even have time to see what was going on before their internal organs were almost displaced by the shock waves. He looked at the distant black void and the dazzling explosion in the void, and he wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth in shock. His expression was gloomy as he muttered, "As expected, these people..." Dong Ming was also in a sorry state. He casually wiped away the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and his face was pale. His expression was calm, and he didn't have the faint smile from before. He turned the thumb ring in his hand, and an indescribable expression appeared in his eyes as he muttered, "Interesting cough. But that elder is a post-god level expert, and this power shouldn't be able to injure him." The youth surnamed Chi shook his head when he heard this. He felt that the odds were against that god-level expert. In a desolate land in the distant Cloudtop Prefecture, Yin Nuoxing suddenly felt something, and he turned his head around. The overflowing black aura on his body was restrained, and his gaze passed through layers of space, and he saw the energy that had erupted in the distance. His gaze was as cold as ice. What's going on? Kai Xia tilted her head, and she stood on her tiptoes on a small mountain of magical beast corpses. She looked at Yin Nuoxing, who had suddenly stopped moving, and she was somewhat puzzled. Sun crystal. Yin Nuoxing's eyelids drooped, and he held a 2-meter-long scepter in his hand. It was a black scepter, and the top of the scepter was surrounded by a black crystal. He lightly tapped the primal chaos scepter and said, "Z detonated the sun crystal." Wow! Kai Xia cried out in surprise, and she almost fell from the mountain. She had heard about the might of the sun crystal, and a perfectly round piece of it could clean a large area with a palm. In fact, it couldn't be cleaned, but that was what it meant. What happened? Why did one suddenly explode? Kai Xia blinked and jumped down from the mountain and went to Yin Nuoxing's side, but the energy didn't pass over. The small piece. I felt the overflowing aura of the gods, Yin Nuoxing said coldly. That means there are gods looking for, Kai Xia stuck out her tongue. If you're worried, then go and take a look. Sometimes, you don't have to be so arrogant. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and said, I'm not worried. I left a part of the pendant to them as the biggest precaution. Whether it's the sun crystal or other things, they all have their own energy. Even if they stand in the center and detonate it, they won't hurt themselves. As he said that, his eyelids drooped slightly, and he looked at the pieces of green and blue magic arrays that appeared in the open space in front of him. He waved his hand, and the scepter flew out and landed in the center of the magic array. Kai Xia saw him move and withdrew her attention and said, "Speaking of which, I haven't seen the Pillar of Creation in the small divine land." The Pillar of Creation also exists in the small divine land, but because of the barrier of the small divine land, they have been separated. Separated? Kai Xia scratched the 2 lumps on her head, puzzled. Just think of it as invisible. The barrier of the small divine land has separated the divine realm and the small divine land into 2 completely different spaces, but on the level of the concept of the rules, they are more or less connected. Connected even when the lotus is broken, Kai Xia said. Yin Nuoxing nodded and said, the Pillar of Creation follows the rules of the divine realm of this world. They are also in the small divine land, but because of the different rules, if you want to see the Pillar of Creation in the small divine land, you just have to find a hidden place, or dash. He paused for a moment and didn't continue. He made a few hand signs, and the green and blue magic array slowly rotated. 4 icicle-shaped green and blue crystals appeared from the void, and the 4 tips were facing the center of the magic array, forming a circle. Then, a circle of diamond-shaped crystals appeared around the 4 icicles, and further out, many more crystals appeared one after another, and the intervals between them were exactly the same. They surrounded the green and blue magic array in layers. Kai Xia saw that he didn't say anything for a long time, and couldn't help but ask, or what? Yin Nuoxing walked to the center of the magic array, grabbed the scepter with both hands, and muttered an incantation. The black crystal at the tip of the scepter emitted a dazzling light, and with a murmur, he stomped the scepter into the center of the magic array. Buzz! A formless black wave was born from the tip of the scepter and rushed to the end of the small divine land with infinite speed in an instant. It passed through the barrier of the small divine land, and at the same time, it spread across the entire divine realm with a faint black energy. That energy was just a pure energy wave, and no one could sense it. No one could sense this wave, and only Kai Xia, who was standing in the center, saw this scene. She stood in the center and felt her vision suddenly darken, and then return to normal in an instant. It was like an illusion, and she was stunned. Just as she was about to open her mouth to ask something, she saw a wall appear on the horizon. It was a snow-white wall surrounded by 10 pillars of light, and she was no stranger to it. Yin Nuoxing had said it before, and she had also flipped through his memories. She was just asking about it, but she didn't expect him to reveal it in the next moment. You deliberately didn't say anything just now, right? Kaixia glanced at him faintly. Yin Nuoxing ignored her for a while, and the tip of the scepter drew a series of mysterious symbols on the formation. Those were the characters of the mythological era, and they had great power. He had studied them for a lifetime, but he could only barely understand their effects, and did not know why. In short, they were very useful. More than half of the protective formation's closing points were carved with kamikaze characters. After carving the 5th kamikaze character, Yin Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief, and the scepter in his hand slammed on the ground. He looked at Kaixia and said, "There is no origin pillar in the small divine land. The pillars of creation in the small divine land are all specially made, and they are one level higher than the origin pillars. There are many energy veins connecting them, and they form many sets of cycles, but only a few of them are connected to the outside world. Furthermore, the pillars of creation in the small divine land never need to be maintained. The barrier of the small divine land is isolated from the outside world, and this part of the pillars of creation is hidden. So all we need to do is to break the barrier." Kaixia let out a long "oh" and suddenly looked at him and sighed, "Little star, you are really so skilled that it makes one's heart ache." Yin Nuoxing was at a loss for words. "If you want to mock me for being a maintenance worker for so many years, just say it. I feel sorry for you for a minute." Yin Nuoxing and Kaixia were not the only ones who saw the black ripple. At the place where the sun crystal exploded, space gradually returned to normal, and a huge crater was naturally left there. However, the laws in space of the small divine land were ultimately more stable and powerful than the realm of the gods, and the small piece of sun crystal on the tip of the thumb had only destroyed the laws, space, and time of the explosion for less than 10 minutes. At this moment, they were rapidly recovering, and even the chaotic energy ripples were quickly calming down. If it were the realm of the gods, it would be fine to use the crater at the old site of the Yuan family as a reference. At this moment, the energy ripples had not yet dissipated. Violet Knight and the others waited for the energy of annihilation to dissipate before they slipped out of the void. They sneaked out fully armed, equipped with all 18 types of God's Park weapons, and were just waiting to meet the Divine Champion head-on. In the end, the Divine Champion was locked down by the Sun Crystal and the Void Cube, and could not even run away as he was sucked into the center of the energy storm and survived. I've never seen a deity in such a miserable state. That high and mighty, actually, I've never seen a deity in my life either. Anyways, he's in such a miserable state. His blood has dyed the void. Mr. Nightmare sighed as he saw the aftermath of the battle. Enough, don't be so dramatic. Yuanshi punched him, and then looked at the horizon with a serious expression. After a moment of silence, he looked at everyone. Just now was that Little Star's movement? Z had just tied up the God Spirit Realm expert who had lost an arm or a leg and was on the verge of death. He had placed a total of 100 layers of seals on the God Spirit Realm expert. He raised his head and sighed. Probably. Perhaps the convergence point has been completed. Xian clenched her fists. Next, we will probably go straight to the 3rd province. Yishi kicked the Divine Champion in annoyance. Son of a bitch, this guy is really wasting our time. If not for him, we, Little Qing, on the other hand, accepted reality. We can't make it in time either. There's not enough time. Everyone smiled bitterly. Xian looked silently at the horizon and sighed. She then looked at Ming and hugged the dejected little angel. Let's keep going. If we stop here, we won't be able to see him again. Chapter 1137. The blue magic circle slowly disappeared into the void. After the wave passed, something seemed to have changed, but it also seemed like it was just an illusion. No one noticed what had happened. The speed of the wave was not even enough for people to react. But it was not as if nothing had happened. The white wall erected in the sky was evidence that something had happened. But still, only those who had seen the pillar of creation could see it. Rosy clouds looked at the pillar of creation in the distance and sorted out what Yin Nuoxing had just said. That is to say, when the divine realm and the little divine prefecture reconnected for a short time, The seal of the little divine prefecture was temporarily broken, and so the pillar of creation came out. Yin Nuashing nodded. The retracting point of the guardian circle is naturally connected to the guardian circle. They are complete on the level of the laws. The slight touch just now made them operate again and reconnect, forcibly breaking the barrier between the inside and the outside. The guardian formation is only complete now? Yes. What additional function? Fixed point attack? Well, it's the efficiency of energy use and the increase of precision in a large span. What's with that expression? The retracting point is just a central energy hub to strengthen the control. Rosy Cloud shrugged. Compared to that, she was actually more concerned about another thing. You seem to have leveled up? You can tell. Yin Nuashing glanced at her and nodded. 9 transformations of the Son of God. When I took back the seal of chaos and the scepter of chaos, the seal was broken, so I just leveled up. That understated tone was as calm as if he had just said what breakfast he had this morning, which made Kai Xia stunned for a while. How could there be someone who could jump 9 small steps not long after he had just advanced to the primary god rank? Moreover, he was so nonchalant about it. It was as if nothing had happened, even a little serious. Rosy Clouds was a little puzzled. Isn't leveling up a good thing? Why don't you look happy? Yin Nuashing sighed and waved his hand gently. The elements of chaos around him were pushed away by him like a cloud. Logically speaking, I should be happy and even celebrate. I'm thinking about the future, and I'm a little annoyed. Huh? Yin Nuashing looked at Rosy Clouds and told her about the effect of the divine physique. According to his current level of 9 transformations of the Son of God, his energy capacity was now only 91%. Although his capacity had increased at the same time as he leveled up, at the same time, a larger part of it was occupied by the divine weapons. At this moment, he could feel that the divine weapons were obviously faster. Even the nether void was subconsciously absorbing his energy. Kai Xia was dumbfounded after hearing this. She only felt very inexplicable. She had never heard of any constitution that was so strange. So, won't you be getting weaker and weaker in the primary god rank? Yes. He was as calm and nonchalant as ever. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Can't you put on some other expression? You look like you're about to have facial paralysis. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment and let go of the scepter. His hands pulled out a smiling expression at the corner of his mouth. Paired with his cold face, Kai Xia had goosebumps. Smiling with a grief-stricken face. Hey, you're still expressionless. Yin Nuashing was speechless. He thought for a while and knelt on the ground. The blue magic circle appeared again. He lowered his head and did his own thing. He could not show any expression at this moment. After sitting for a while, Kai Xia could no longer sit still. Flapping the pair of transparent wings on her back, her feet were half an inch above the ground as she floated back and forth on the ground. As the second of the 3 members of the Wing Clan, her wings also came with a special effect. When she flapped her wings, a layer of light golden powder would sprinkle down, ignoring the wind and rain, only falling to the ground. It was the energy she emitted that condensed into tiny crystals, although Yin Nuashing called it dandruff. The rosy clouds circled around him in boredom, just like how planets circled around the sun. She circled around him in boredom. She was not afraid of the chaotic elements that brushed past her, as they could not hurt her anyway. The seal of chaos and the scepter of chaos were like 2 satellites hanging around Yin Nuashing. They emitted rings of light as if they were resonating. When they touched Yin Nuashing, another ring of light would be emitted from his body. It was a cycle. Rosy Clouds could not understand what he was doing. She tilted her head and looked at him because she was bored. He did not say anything, which made her feel bored. Rosy Clouds almost fell asleep. She lowered her head and almost fell asleep. When she came back to her senses, she realized that there was a small golden mountain on the ground. Even his head was piled up. He seemed to be petrified. He was motionless. His breathing and signs of life were so weak that she could not feel them at all. If it were not for the contract between them, and she could still feel that he was fine, she might have panicked. But at this moment, she was indeed a little panicked. She could feel a faint aura of death spreading from his body. It was faint, but very scary. "What are you doing?" Yin Nuoxing opened her eyes, and a black light flashed past, scaring her to the point that her breathing stopped. It was a pair of pure black eyes, and the two diamond-shaped pupils had turned colorful, as if they had exchanged colors. Suppressed the chaotic elements, and a cold voice rang in her ears. It made rosy clouds breathe a sigh of relief. It was still a familiar voice for the time being. She also knew what that it was referring to. "I thought you had completely controlled it." She looked at Yin Nuoxing's hair. His colorful hair was mixed with silver-black parts. That was messed up by him. It was originally a complete silver-black color, like a hanging waterfall. Now that it was scattered, she felt that it was even more strange. Control. Yin Nuoxing's expression was indescribable. He suddenly sneered. It was unknown whether he was laughing at himself or something else. "It's impossible to control it. The chaotic elements, according to the old saying, it's against reason and nature. It's an ominous thing. Of course, that's the view of ignorant people. However, it's true that it's hard to control. It will destroy many things. Order and rules will disappear under its power. As you can see, my life form has already begun to change when the chaotic elements return to my body. Although I've suppressed it, but control is only relative. It's impossible to completely control it. As for it, there's nothing much to say." He shook his head helplessly as he spoke. His ambiguous statement made rosy clouds wrinkle her nose. However, she knew that this guy would never explain things clearly. She just muttered a few complaints and didn't say anything more. He had his own burdens. It was he who added them to himself. He didn't want to share them with others. The surroundings became quiet again. However, Rosy Clouds felt bored as she wandered around. She walked back and forth inside the green and blue magic circle. Suddenly, she felt something. After walking out of the green and blue magic circle, she felt that the hostility towards him from the outside world seemed to have lessened a little. It seemed that it was because he was sitting inside the magic circle. She had been following him around in the dark shrine. She could even feel the faint hostility that filled the world. It was only until he walked into the magic circle that the hostility faded a little. "Hey, look outside." Rosy Clouds looked at him with a little excitement. Just when she was about to tell him about it, Yin Nuoxing suddenly opened his eyes. He waved his hand, and a golden chain swept out from his sleeve. It quickly wrapped around her waist and pulled her back into the magic circle. She was stunned. She looked at the face that was only half a meter away from her. "What's wrong?" Yin Nuoxing waved his hand to signal her to be quiet. After that, he sighed softly. "We have guests. You're the first one to come to us. It seems that there's still someone who can't sit still. Time flies. Many years have passed, but this world still hasn't changed." The last words were obviously not said to her. However, she was stunned. Mei Mao looked around and was a little vigilant. She whispered, "Who's there?" "Who knows? I don't know him anyway." Yin Nuoxing whispered. He didn't hide his words just now. As long as one wasn't deaf, they would be able to hear his voice. However, that person didn't seem to have any intention of coming out immediately. Even if he knew that he had been discovered, he still wandered around and observed something. The silence between heaven and earth lasted for about 10 minutes. Yin Nuoxing was indifferent. He didn't stand up, nor was he vigilant. However, Rosy Clouds didn't dare to relax. Based on his tone and expression, plus the fact that she couldn't find him after looking for a long time, all these situations told her that the person who came was extraordinary. Most likely, he didn't come with good intentions. Rosy Clouds still looked around vigilantly, concentrating on looking for anything that might be wrong. This strange atmosphere continued for a few more minutes. Suddenly, ripples appeared on the mountain that was piled up with the corpses of demons. A figure slowly rose from the water and emerged. A faint voice was also heard. "It's a little interesting." Rosy Clouds hurriedly turned her head, her back facing Yin Nuoxing. Mei Mao's expression was dignified. That was a great enemy. A great enemy for her. The aura coming from that figure made her shudder. He was probably a master of that level. It was a middle-aged man wearing a khaki robe. His style was not the same as the clothes of the people in the God's world or the small divine land. Perhaps there was some time difference. He casually stood on that small mountain, but he emitted an aura that made the whole world tremble. It was as if he could make the world collapse with a wave of his hand. He looked ordinary, and Kaixia's senses were already extremely vigilant towards him. Just this point alone made her feel dignified. However, the impact on her line of sight was much weaker, and she was stunned again. After ascending to the level of gods, which one of them did not have an extraordinary appearance and a transcendent temperament. For example, the gods she had seen before were all like that. Suddenly, an ordinary uncle appeared. Anyway, gods had their reasons for doing whatever they wanted. She just let her imagination run wild for a while, and then she was too lazy to care about this point. Anyway, most of the people who came were enemies and not friends. What's the matter? Yin Nuoxing did not even turn her head. These two words were indifferent, and it made the god suddenly grin. The man in the khaki robe slowly sat down cross-legged on the mountain of corpses. I came to take a look. And while I was at it, I came to talk. Someone spread some bad news. There will be more and more people in this world who are hostile to you. Oh, Yin Nuoxing responded indifferently. Oh, the god was slightly stunned, and then he frowned slightly. It seems that you still don't quite understand your position at the moment. I just came to confirm if you are what that malice from beyond the heavens said. Are you done? If you're done, please go back. I still have things to do. Yin Nuoxing was still indifferent. The man took a deep breath and sighed. Maybe I didn't make it clear enough. I came here because I was invited by many people. That is to say, I am representing many people. I'm not here for myself. Do you understand? The air was silent for a while, and there was no response. Just when the man could not help but want to scold her, Yin Nuoxing slowly raised her head and turned to look at him. Her eyes were full of indifference and frost. Then, what does it have to do with me? Do I care what you think? Do I care what you think? Do I care whether you are enemies or friends? Yin Nuoxing sighed softly. No, I don't care about anything. There is nothing in this world that is worth my attention. I just want to complete my mission. At least for now, I don't care about anything else. I don't care. The man frowned. Even if your physique is known by others, it is still the same? What does it have to do with me? Yin Nuoxing turned her head and stared at the green and blue magic circle in front of her. Everything I do is for whatever is in front of me. No matter what it is, I just have to push it away. So don't block the way. Everyone is fine. The man was stunned. Suddenly, he could not help but laugh. There was a strange expression on his face. But your answer is not what many people want. They don't want that. Let me ask you this. Will what you do affect us or them? Yin Nuoxing shook her head. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Then what if it will? The man grinned. It is just as I said. Then they can't deny that you will not become enemies with us. As such, you are a potential unstable factor. This is their answer. Unfortunately, just now your words have been passed to those people in the cloud-top state and those behind us. The man slowly stood up. His voice was slightly colder. At this moment, there are hundreds of millions, even trillions of people looking here, looking at you. Oh! Yin Nuoxing reached out and twirled a strand of her long hair around her finger. And then, I'm sorry to inform you that there are even more people who wish to kill you. We've discussed this and adopted a compromise. If you're willing to accept the divine word shackles and submit to us, you'll be safe. It's just a safety measure that won't affect you normally, but if you disobey us, it will destroy you from the inside out, Joshua said. Words of the gods, binding? Yin Nuoxing laughed strangely. In this world, there are only 2 or 3 people who can bind me. Even they do not dare to place this brand. You? Ha! The man narrowed his eyes. So, you're going to refuse? You have said a lot of nonsense. You have wasted 9 minutes and 42 seconds of my time. If there is nothing else, you can leave. I am very busy and do not have time to deal with you. You are all very bored. The closed barrier of the small divine land has caused you to be self-enclosed, arrogant, and self-righteous. Forget it. Now let's go. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and slowly closed her eyes. The green and blue magic circle that had been stagnant for a while began to operate again. Silence. Another long period of silence. It was so long that Kai Xia felt as if an entire era had passed. The man suddenly laughed. As he laughed, a cold, murderous aura appeared on his body. An aura that could even shake the world quietly spread out, causing the space and laws of this world to constantly distort and collapse. The green and blue magic circle stopped again, but it was not because of him. Yin Nuashing stopped it himself. He raised his head and sighed. 11 minutes. Kai Xiao's heart thumped. She quickly turned around to look at him, and then looked at the yellow-robed uncle who was constantly releasing the divine pressure. She kindly reminded him, "Uncle, you should go back quickly. Otherwise, things will get out of control later." The yellow-robed man glared. The cold aura pressed down on Kai Xia in an overwhelming manner. Kai Xia only felt a tightness in her chest. However, it was only for a moment. It was so short that she thought it was an illusion. Just as she was wondering why she was able to resist the divine pressure, she felt an even colder aura that seemed to come from hell. She seemed to see the world collapsing and the galaxy being torn apart. Kai Xia smiled bitterly. "Uncle, Sai, you are in trouble." As she spoke, she turned around and squatted down. Her wings were curled up. She couldn't bear to see what was going to happen next. Yin Nuashing stood up and exchanged positions with Kai Xia. The black cloud aura kept swaying on his body like a cloak, as if it had really condensed into a cloak. She could even hear the sound of fluttering. She even felt that in the nearby void, there was a power that was enough to cleanse the entire cloud-top province. She didn't know when this madman had gathered such a large amount of energy. She only knew that when she noticed it, it was already so large that it was frightening. "You have violated 3 taboos." In Yin Nuashing's black eyes, 2 colorful diamonds spun crazily, connecting into a bright vertical slit. First, it delayed me for nearly half an hour. It was obviously 12 minutes. Kai Xia couldn't help but mutter. "Second, you have vainly tried to control me and release hostility towards me. The most important thing is..." Yin Nuashing opened his palm, loosening and tightening it. A drop of ink-like energy appeared in his palm. It was obviously black, but it released an extremely dazzling light. Even the light was black, illuminating the world. "You have hit the wrong person. I am very protective. The price will be paid by you and the people behind you. I have heard your declaration. I will also say my declaration. I think you're all looking for death. You don't want to walk on the main road, but insist on squeezing on the narrow path. Then go to hell. Arrogant person, don't think that you can look down on the strong in this world just because you have that inhuman thing." The yellow-robed man was furious. He took a step forward and directly appeared in front of Yin Nuashing with endless power. An ordinary punch landed, and suddenly the world collapsed. Space and the void exploded. Endless earth and stone aura covered the sky and covered the earth as it rushed towards Yin Nuashing. That ordinary punch made Kai Xia feel that there was a terrifying giant beast behind her that could devour the world. She even felt frightened. Ta! With a snap, the drop of ink-black energy was casually crushed. An invisible wave spread across the world at an incalculable speed. The black energy pulled open a circular curtain that enveloped a radius of 10,000 miles. The divine spirit expert's movements instantly became sluggish, but his punch still landed. The punch landed directly on Yin Nuashing's chest, but he could not even force the latter to take a step back. The black cyclone and mist turned into an invisible rope that wrapped around his body. His hands and feet were wrapped by the cyclone. When his punch landed on Yin Nuashing's chest, he thought that his attack had worked. He was about to activate his power to destroy Yin Nuashing's soul. Just as his power surged into Yin Nuashing's body, his mind seemed to have fallen into a bottomless abyss. His vision instantly darkened, and there was a circle of chaotic darkness lingering in his eyes. In his vision, an unknown fear wandered freely in his heart and expanded endlessly, covering his soul with a layer of gray. That strange sight caused him to scream in fear. Kai Xiao was not too sure what kind of emotion was contained in that scream. She only felt that her whole body was cold. That was a scream of terror. It sounded like a scream, but it was actually a scream. A scream that was enough to scare people to death. She stealthily turned her head and widened her eyes in horror. That divine elite had a calm expression on his face just now, but at this moment, even his eyes had turned dark. His body was wrapped in a whirlpool of purple, black, and silver blue clouds. There was even more energy coming out from Yun Nuoxing's chest continuously, spreading from the hand that was pressing against his chest to the former's body. She could not recognize what it was, but she could feel the process. Those several types of energy were swarming up, as if they had seen some delicious food and were about to feast. They were devouring that divine spirit expert. No, she felt that something was wrong. It was destruction, but it was assimilation. Yes, it was assimilation. That's right, it was assimilation. That divine spirit expert was being assimilated by the elements of chaos and that silver-black, inhuman thing. Yin Nuoxing looked at the scene coldly. From the beginning to the end, he had only done one thing: to cancel out the energy generated by the divine spirit expert's punch. After that, it was what happened when he touched the divine spirit expert. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp. He wanted to run away, but he could not move. I said, "Don't touch me." "Oh, I didn't say that. But you have heard it now. You can't hear it anymore." Yin Nuoxing looked at the divine spirit expert that was being wrapped by the elements of chaos and that silver-black energy, turning into a sculpture that was surging with energy. His eyes flashed with madness. The divine spirit expert devours the origin, and all the origin, everything can be turned into energy. Hey, do you know what this means? Do you know what this sentence means? He was not saying it for the divine spirit expert to hear. He was saying it for the people behind him, the billions of people who were watching this place. That means I could devour everything in this world into my body. I have never done it before. Hey, do you want to see it? He smiled evilly. He knew that there were people watching this place. He could feel the gazes of millions of people. Then let's watch. Yin Nuoxing opened his arms and smiled as he murmured. Then he gently reached out his hand and grabbed the sculpture that was completely sealed and shattered by the energy. He murmured, "This is the darkness in my heart. This is the sin in my heart. You are the first to see it, but you will not be the last. Now, you are mine. I want to devour your soul." Chapter 1138. It was like a giant beast devouring a weak prey, a drop of water returning to the sea. Countless people in the Cloudtop province, the second province, the third province, and many more people raised their heads to look at the scene reflected in the sky. They watched as the high and mighty divine spirit expert was turned into a statue by that destructive power. The inhuman stretched out his hand and pressed on his body. His body and soul were wrapped in black energy and slowly drilled into the inhuman, his mouth and body, disappearing without a trace. The whole city was silent, and half of the small divine land was dead silent. It was them, many of them. Their actions made the god take action. They were the ones who caused all this to happen. What could he have been? Maybe, but all of this was meaningless now. Just a few seconds ago, he was eaten by the inhuman, and not even a trace of him was left. The inhuman raised its head, and a wisp of black energy hung from the corner of its mouth. Its eyes glowed with an evil light, as if it was not satisfied. A god had died, and this was something that countless people witnessed. Yes, he was dead. His body and soul were annihilated together and turned into nutrients for the inhuman. They were the ones who caused all this to happen. It was their blind hostility and the uneasiness in their hearts that caused this to happen. Perhaps they were greedy, but they would not put the blame on themselves. That monster was too powerful, so powerful that it made them uneasy. The more powerful it was, the more it could arouse their inexplicable hostility, and the more it could make them act irrationally. They would commit crimes without thinking and blame everything on it. In the sky above the 5th province, a purple-gold airship was hovering at an altitude of 10,000 miles. A group of people were standing on the airship. The atmosphere was strangely gloomy. From inside to outside, from the atmosphere outside to the hearts of these people, the atmosphere was strangely gloomy. Zian and the others saw this scene. Of course, what happened in the Cloud Op state was caused by some higher-ups. They announced this matter to the world. No matter what the result was, no matter what the consequences were, it was probably good for them. But who knew what those higher-ups were thinking? They had already achieved their goal of announcing this matter. Everyone in the 9 states, including the Cloud Top state, knew about this matter. Perhaps this was the situation they wanted to see. This was the situation that they wanted to see, but it was not the scene that they wanted to see. They had chased him for over a dozen provinces just to see him, but they did not expect to see him in this unexpected place. They saw the most unexpected scene that they did not want to see the most. A spirit receiving divine body, an inhuman thing. Look, that is an evil thing, something that the world will not tolerate. A cold laugh came from the airship. You still want to side with him? He is a monster. If he is allowed to do evil, he will destroy the world sooner or later. Slap. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a clear sound of a palm slapping with great force. Then, his body shot out and crashed into the side of the airship. However, his body was very strong. Even with dozens of seals of laws, he cannot be hurt by ordinary bumps. The voice that suddenly rang out pulled everyone out of the haze. Everyone was startled. When they once again regained their senses and turned their heads to look at that person, they saw that Ming Ming's entire body was burning with inextinguishable sacred flames. A golden palm print had appeared on that fellow's face. With a single glance, it was obvious who had caused that clear and crisp slap. Ming's divine and beautiful face had a slight smile. Mei Mao smiled. She quietly walked in front of that person and said, "So what?" He said that this world is sinful, and this world is sinful. He said that this world should die, and no one can stop this world from dying. A frog at the bottom of a well. He is an evil thing, and he does extreme things. He is saving the realm of the gods. How much do you know about the sacrifices he has made? Now you're stopping him. Can I assume that you want this world to die? Every time Ming Ming spoke, the smile on his face would become brighter and brighter. Golden sacred flames burned on the god spirit elite. So ignorant, so short-sighted. How can people like you become gods? Heaven, this law must be blind. TSK, saving the world? Him? Ignorant people, you are all jackals of the same tribe. If there is a disaster in the world, there will be countless chivalrous people who will come stop it. There will also be people who will come to solve the problem in the divine land. We will all do our part. If he really does it, this world will really be finished. The divine elite laughed loudly, mocking everyone. Ming smiled and raised his hand. But before he could swing it down, Zai stopped him. You can hit the face of a city wall. Don't you think your hand hurts? After saying that, she glanced at the guy who was paralyzed on the ground and said indifferently, "He is right. Although the divine land seems chaotic and power is supreme, you guys are still too comfortable. The entire realm of the gods, including the people and lives in the divine land, are enjoying an unimaginable comfort. Every day, you guys put in all your effort and act self-righteously. You think this is chaos, this is turmoil. You say that the undercurrents are surging and the winds are changing. Even the stagnant water in the sewers is stronger than the wind and waves you guys are stirring. You?" The divine elite's expression was unfriendly. "You guys don't know what this world is facing. You guys don't even know how to look outside and see what is waiting for this world. The seal of an era. The seal of an era. In less than 20 eras, the entire realm of the gods has lost its vigilance. The first great heavenly god set up a shelter to protect the entire realm of the gods, not to let you trash maggots nest here and eat your coffins to destroy your own sex. If the heavenly destruction god knows about this, he will smash your coffins into pieces and jump out to kill all of you. The first major world of the 8 elements realm has actually fallen in is such an unbearable state. A single strand of malicious intent can deceive all of you to this extent. What kind of divine beings are you? The divine elite's face alternated between green and white. He felt like he had misheard something. What first great heavenly god? What heavenly destruction god? These names seemed to have some kind of indescribable magical power. They touched him but didn't cause any additional changes in him. However, he still felt that something wasn't right. Of course, he knew about the malicious intent from beyond the heavens. That torrent of information had spread throughout the entire realm of the gods, and everyone knew about it. The malicious intent contained in that information was too deliberate. It was so deliberate that it was simply placed in front of everyone, as if it was afraid that someone wouldn't see it. He didn't know what Z was talking about, but he had doubts in his heart. Divine elites were always thinking. Their long lifespans had bestowed them with many things. After living for a long time, people became shrewd with age. He could think of many things. Although he was harboring malicious intent in his heart, it didn't stop him from thinking. He felt that this woman was implying something. What exactly are you talking about? What kind of strange and messy things are you talking about? What kind of things are you talking about? The divine elite frowned, and sweat seeped out of his forehead. Could it be that the demon world has descended from the outside world again? But in the past, the demon world has descended quite a few times, and the realm of the gods hasn't fallen to such a serious state, as you said. Even at that time, many experts will be born in the small divine prefecture. The demon world, the demon world. Z only felt a burst of anger for no reason. She couldn't stop the irritable thoughts in her heart. The demon world has blinded your eyes. You grew up eating sh*t. Can't you think of anything else other than this unlucky neighbor? Or do you think that the biggest threat in this world is that bastard neighbor? I at %yen, and the unlucky divine elite was stunned by the scolding. His brain repeatedly stopped working, and his capacity was almost insufficient. His thoughts were so chaotic that he almost couldn't think. Z sucked in a deep breath and lifted him up with her jade-like hands. She got into a horse stance and grabbed a large amount of information with her jade-like hands. She used all her strength to slap it into his head. Open your eyes for this old lady. Wash your soul clean and see this world clearly. Let's see what's happening in this unlucky world right now. Let's see what the little bastard has sacrificed for us. See what he's doing. Compared to this matter, you guys, at %, S-mess is not even worth a single strand of hair. After she finished scolding, she threw him to the ground and walked to the side angrily. Damn it, you're all a mob? Useless. No wonder little Star said that he didn't want anyone to help at all. What's going on? Everyone sighed. They more or less understood why the person who dragged the half-broken body rolled up his sleeves and went to fight by himself in the end. Looking at this situation, they didn't have much hope just by listening to the divine elite's words. This divine realm, they really didn't know how it fell to this point. Everyone sighed and looked back at the divine elite. The latter was paralyzed on the ground. They didn't know whether he was stunned by the scolding or because he fell to the ground. Combined with the momentum of Ziyeh's scolding and the momentum of the horse stance, they felt that it was both. That guy doesn't seem to be very calm now, Lin Sheng suddenly said. Lin Sheng suddenly said softly, which made everyone's heart skip a beat. They quickly turned around and saw that the purple-gold flying ship hovering in the air was still in the same position. The projection in the sky had not disappeared. It was a projection facing the entire 9 regions. Everyone could see it in the same position when they looked up, and the picture was not as big as they imagined. Yin Nuoxing wiped the black energy from the corner of his mouth. The red light and the black light in his eyes intertwined and became chaotic. He raised his head and looked at the surrounding space. His palm gently wiped the surroundings, and the chaotic elements lingered. An invisible wave burst out at a speed far faster than the speed of light, rushing in all directions. Those who were hiding in the surroundings and observing, who thought that he couldn't see, were shocked out of the void. Kaixia hadn't recovered from the shock of the scene just now. She saw several people falling from the sky. She opened her mouth in a daze. Why are there still people? Those people were shocked when they escaped from the void. When they saw Yun Nuoxing's cold eyes that could freeze the void, they trembled and quickly cupped their hands. We were just passing by. We didn't mean to disturb your excellency. Please forgive us, your excellency. Yun Nuoxing tilted his head and smiled evilly. The red and black in his eyes flashed crazily. His cold and strange voice had a hollow echo, as if he was shouting in the endless abyss. Passing by? What is passing by? Can anyone who appears here be passing by? Is there any meaning in putting a knife to your neck and begging for mercy? No meaning. Nothing is meaningful. The strange and cold laughter sounded in their ears. They were so shocked that their faces turned pale. They quickly turned around and retreated. However, before they could fly half a foot, their bodies strangely froze in the air. A black spike with turbid clouds pierced through their chests. Their consciousness and vitality disappeared in a few blinks of an eye. Their bodies and souls were wrapped by the elements of chaos and the silver-black energy. They melted into an unknown substance and fused into the black spike. In the end, they were completely devoured by Yun Nuoxing. You all seem to be enjoying the show. Yun Nuoxing turned his gaze and looked at a red crystal floating in the air. That crystal had been floating in the air since the death of the god elite. It was probably used to project the scene here to half of the small divine land. He couldn't help but smile. His eyes flashed evilly and looked ferocious. There were two balls of light floating in front of him. You all seem to like to think too much. Come, in 2 days I will go to the third state. The land of divine weapons. I welcome all of you. The flesh and soul of God are quite delicious ingredients. As he spoke, he licked his lips. The elements of chaos flickered and shattered the red crystal. The image that covered half of the small divine land also disappeared completely. Everyone who saw this scene felt a chill in their hearts. Their clothes were soaked with sweat. This was no longer hiding it. It was a blatant provocation. It was a declaration of war against the entire small divine land. Kai Xiao was also in a daze when she saw this scene. She couldn't help but swallow. She looked at him blankly. You ate them? The devouring ability of the spiritual, godly body. The red and black light in Yun Nuoxing's eyes gradually disappeared. The aura on his body changed slightly. He had advanced again, and his capacity had expanded to an exaggerated extent. When he stabilized his 5th transformation of Supreme God Realm, the advancement of the elementary God Realm was like child's play to him. However, this stage of the realm didn't mean anything to him. He had already passed the elementary God Realm several times. For others, this was a special stage where they had a lot of time to train themselves. But for him, he just wanted to quickly pass this stage that was not friendly to the spiritual godly body. After all, there was nothing to train in the elementary God Realm. No matter how much he trained now, it was just to recover his strength. That was the essence. Since he carried the memory, he would not lose the memory of the battle. There was nothing to miss about the elementary God Realm, the gods and the God Emperor. It was so difficult to break the seal once. What should we do next? If we use the fairy's item too early, we won't be able to break the seal later. He did not answer her question. In fact, it was equivalent to admitting it. There was nothing to explain. He had just become unscrupulous. Taking someone's life was just a matter of moving his fingers. He had already gotten used to it. Since they could not get along peacefully, then he would just push away all the obstacles. He did not intend to waste a lot of time dealing with anyone. Those that he could not push away, he would just directly destroy them. Kai Xiao looked at him and suddenly grinned. She moved closer to him and carefully reached out her hand to touch his chest. Yun Nuoxing's cheek twitched. He took a step back. Stop fooling around. So, you really couldn't control them. They moved spontaneously? Kai Xiao showed a victorious smile. Half and half. They came up when I used the element of chaos. Otherwise, why do you think I asked you to stay away? If there was an accident, it wouldn't be a simple 10,000 years. Yin Nuashing sighed faintly. So, don't come too close to me. It's very dangerous. Kai Xia smiled again. You're worried that I'll be eaten? I'm worried that I'll choke. Kai Xia was speechless. Before the girl could explode, Yin Nuashing waved his hand and sat down in the middle of the blue magic circle. He slowly closed his eyes. I'll need you to protect me for the next few days. Kai Xia was shocked when she heard that. Don't. Your enemies are all god emperors or gods. How can I deal with them? Yin Nuashing shook his head. They won't come again for a short period of time. The fall of a god or saint-level god is already a sign of level 1 combat readiness. Even if those forces that have never produced a god or heavenly god and those who have never seen a god don't know the difference, they only need to know that a god has fallen. Those two words represent too much. Success because of a god, failure because of a god. It's an interesting idea. It's quite close, but not entirely correct. He nodded. I deliberately revealed my itinerary just now. There are 2 reasons. Kai Xia thought for a moment and raised her finger. One is to open up a path for Xian and the others. When you reveal your destination, those people will probably not pay attention to them anymore and turn their attention to you. And it's not at this moment. It's at the little divine land 3 days later, where the sword of time sand will fall. As for the second reason, it's the latter one. There shouldn't be any more reasons. Yin Nuashing nodded and yawned. Since you know, it's even better. So be it. It won't take too long. I'll do it a little. If I don't wake up in 2 days, you'll have to wake me up. Kai Xia thought for a moment and squatted down to look for a brick. She weighed the gravel in her hand and felt that it was not big enough. Yin Nuashing, are you trying to kill me? Yin Nuashing deliberately spread the news. For this reason, he did not care how powerful that place would become or how dangerous it would become. He just wanted no one to disturb him at this moment and no one to disturb them. That was why he said that sometimes self-destruction was the best of both worlds. In a sense, it was the best of both worlds. The image released by the red crystal caused a huge uproar in the small divine prefecture. The fall of that god-level master must have caused a lot of losses to the forces behind him. There were also many kinds of internal and external pressures. Many people would probably lose sleep tonight. In the land of the 5th state, close to the edge of the arc of the 4th state, a purple-gold spaceship swept across the space. That image had disappeared, but what was left in the entire little divine land was a huge, invisible oppression. Even Xian and the others, who were high up in the sky, could feel it. What came from the ground below was a suffocating oppression. Just like how Yin Nuashing acted unscrupulously, it seemed that many people would do the same. That god was sitting cross-legged on the ground of the spaceship, looking at the empty sky. He frowned and remained silent. He was very gloomy and seemed a little depressed. No one knew what he was thinking. Anyway, he was a dangerous person. Just don't touch him. Although he was tightly bound by hundreds of seals at the moment, he was still a god. The seals could not keep him sealed forever. Who knew if he would explode in the next second? But if they let him go now, it would be an even greater disaster. After all, they were not completely targeting Yin Nuashing. They were targeting Feng, Little White, and the 4 gods of heaven and earth. Involving Yin Nuashing was probably just a convenient thing. Sigh. He let out a long sigh, which made everyone's hair stand on end. Zai could not help but turn around and glare at him. Can you be a little quieter? Chattering is annoying. If you say sigh again, believe it or not, I will stuff your mouth with something indescribable. The effect was immediate. That god was instantly silenced. He looked at everyone on the spaceship and sighed, lamenting the changes in the realm of the gods and the turbulence of the laws of heaven and earth. Sigh. As he thought about it, he let out another heavy sigh, which made Zai's hair stand on end. What the F***ck are you sighing for? Things in the future, Sai. He sighed again. To be honest, I don't completely believe what you told me, but it seems that as long as any one of them is true, it will be a big deal. Uncle, it's not true or false. This is something that really exists. It's useless to run away from it. Yishi shook her feet. I know, so I'm thinking about the future. Zai and the others heard that and looked at each other. he could actually still be enlightened? Even after seeing yin nuashing, he could still enlighten himself? Like you said, it's just a try. It's useless to doubt it. That god smiled helplessly. I don't expect you to let me go. If you have time, can you tell me the details? Chapter 1139. There were two distinct groups of people sitting on the airship. One group was explaining a very complicated matter. Some of them were talking at once to express their shock. The other group only had one person. He was surrounded by seals and couldn't move at all. He was listening very carefully to the other group's chatter. The noisy chatter couldn't stop him from listening attentively. Yin Nuashing's matter, his position in the celestial realm, the Dark Age, and the celestial realm itself. There are many things. Any one of them could be treated as a secret. However, this information was circulating in Gao Yuan's mind over and over again, making him dizzy. There wasn't much information. He could compress it to the limit and finish it in a few lines. However, the amount of information was too much. It was so mysterious that it sounded like a fairy tale. He couldn't help but believe it. It wasn't until he finished listening that he understood why the lavender-haired girl said that the celestial realm was in danger. If this continued, there was no telling if the celestial realm could survive until the end of this era. A long era had only passed for 1,000,000 years. Many earth-shattering things could happen in a year. In the remaining time, Gao Yuan took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and opened them again. He stared at Zai indifferently. What you said is all true, right? Shi shrugged. You're the first person to know other than us in the Nine-God Shrine. Although we've asked the Nine-God Shrine to slowly spread the news in the celestial realm. This kind of thing can't be exposed all at once. Not to mention the impact it will cause. It's a problem whether or not people will believe it. I'm still very optimistic about the Nine-God Shrine's reputation, but after all, this is a matter of this level. You see, the Nine-God Shrine is slightly suppressed in the celestial realm. Who knows if people will think we're crazy if we tell them all this? Gao Yuan nodded to show that he understood. That's right. Very few people will believe it. People of our level may have doubts, but that's it. We won't pursue it too much. When the disaster really happens, it'll be too late. He sighed and continued. You're right. The little divine prefecture has been peaceful for far too long. The God realm has already gotten used to this kind of simple and ordinary chaos. It's like a family affair. Compared to the things that are about to come, all of this is nothing. Gao Yuan shook his head and looked at Violet Knight and the others. Suddenly, he frowned and lowered his head. Perhaps we can find the protectors. Guardian race? Are you talking about the Guardian forces? They should be very busy outside right now. Isn't that so? Ziyi couldn't help but be stunned when he saw him shake his head in denial. Gao Yuan gazed into the distant sky. I'm talking about the Guardians, the Guardian clan, not the Guardian faction. There are also Guardian factions in the small divine lands. It's more comfortable for us to move around in the small divine lands and outside. We don't have to lie on the floor all day long, and we know a lot of information. Guardian, the other of the two divine authorities in the God realm. Z finally understood what he was talking about, and her beautiful face became serious. But the Guardian's position has always been empty. Little Star said that he could see it, and as an observer, even the Guardian's position is within his observation range. He shouldn't have made a mistake. Hearing this, Gao Yuan frowned. But there is indeed a Guardian clan in the small divine lands. We can be very sure that they are not a Guardian faction, and they didn't always call themselves the Guardian clan. This clan has existed since I was born, until today. However, they went into seclusion a long time ago. There hasn't been any news about them yet, and they disappeared without anyone noticing. The whole process only took half a day. It was as simple as taking a nap and nothing happened. The Guardians have already perished. They were killed. They were killed by the people of the God realm themselves. Even if there is any inheritance left behind, it has nothing to do with that position of Guardian. A slightly nervous voice spread throughout the airship, startling everyone. They turned to look at Xian in a daze. They saw her clutching the pendant in front of her chest. Her beautiful face was full of anxiety, but there was also an unwavering conviction on her face. This news shocked everyone. They all knew that Xian wouldn't joke around at this time. Moreover, with her relationship with Yan Nuashing, she might have accidentally heard him say something. Her words were also very credible, and from her expression, it didn't seem like she was lying. However, if this news was true, then it was a little scary. The people of the God Realm had killed their own guardian. This was as serious as the annihilation of an entire clan. No, how did you know? Zi waved her hand to wake herself from her shocked state. She looked at Xian in confusion. That little bastard told you? But I didn't see this when I flipped through his memories. Xian nodded nervously and took a deep breath. Last time, I accidentally saw it. I used Little Star's eyes to see what he had been observing. I accidentally saw this in the memory cluster. It was Little Star who said it. Oh my god, is it about the Bulsh asterisk T from the ancient era again? Nightmare slapped his thigh and jumped up. How restless were the ancient era. They were so noisy, and now they even killed their guardian. Xian shook her head. It seems to be something from the Dark Age. Little Star himself isn't too sure. He saw the result from the empty position of guardian. It is said that because the guardian was killed by his own people, the position of guardian has been vacant until now. I don't know what it has affected. Original sin. That is the original sin of all life in the God Realm. All life, humans, demons, and demons. The killing of the guardian has definitely affected a lot of things. Among them, there are things related to the concept layer of the God Realm. Feng was suddenly said softly, attracting everyone's attention. Feng calmed herself down and looked at Little Qing. Little Qing nodded at her in agreement. We, the four divine beasts, are also listed as world beings, but we have authority that other world beings do not. The four divine beasts are connected to the world precepts of the God Realm. We are the four pillars that maintain the stability of the concept layer. The birth of the guardian and the observer will leave unconcealable ripples in the world precepts. It is like the God's proclamation, which is announced to the entire void. However, the former only causes ripples in the world precepts of the God Realm, and it is rarely noticed. Not many people know about this, which means that not many people know about the two divine positions in the God Realm. Little Star said that not many people knew about this in the ancient era. He only knew about it because he was, appointed by fate. Gao Yuan's eyes flashed. After a while, he calmed down and calmed down. He calmly judged and thought. After a while, he said, in other words, the process of the people of the God Realm killing their own guardian has caused irreversible damage to the concept layer of the God Realm. Is that what you mean? Feng closed her eyes as if to confirm something. After a while, she opened her eyes and looked at him. She nodded. That's what the bloodline fragment told me. Something like that. After that, she frowned again. But I don't know what it will affect or what it will affect. I only know that the God Realm has been affected by the fall of the Guardian in the Dark Age. Maybe the withering of the natural order was caused by that incident. Zai raised a finger and pointed to the sky. You see, the Guardian and the Observer of the God Realm have their names hanging on the concept layer of the natural order. The energy of the God Realm comes from its own world core. The world core contains a complete set of natural order and is directly connected to the void. In other words, all living beings living in the God Realm have a piece of natural order fragment that is related to the two priesthoods. Since that's the case, it might be related to the two priesthoods themselves. And the person who has these natural order fragments killed one of the two priesthoods. Cold sweat suddenly appeared on Yao Hua's forehead. He said in a trembling voice, "Is it equivalent to going against the natural order? The kind where one of their own kills one of their own." Going against the natural order to kill a god? Gao Yuan thought for a while. Something like that. The most extreme offense of the inferior to the superior. Even if they win in this action, they will be judged by the concept of a natural order. It's unavoidable and unstoppable. He sighed. If that Fei cough, you know washing, right? If he's right, I'm afraid there might be something wrong with the guardian that I know. What's the problem? Yuanshi tilted his head and looked at him. Is there a problem? Even if it's not the guardian themselves, maybe it's one of them? Maybe they actually have the position of guardian, but they don't know how to get there. That reminds me. Back then, there were rumors that they were doing something strange. And it was because of this that I found it strange. The process was like going against the flow and ascending to heaven, disturbing the rules of the small divine land, but it didn't last for long and didn't cause any special effects, so no one paid attention to it. Perhaps it's just as you said, they have the position of guardian, and they're trying. But this is just a fantasy, not a real thing. Well, it's a little troublesome to explain. Anyway, have you heard of the Tongtian canon? Gao Yuan looked at everyone. The Tongtian canon? Zian and the others looked at each other, confused and confused. Yao Hua and the others tried hard to think, scratching their heads and shaking their heads. Well, you haven't seen it, but it proves one thing. If there's no inheritance among the ancient human race like you, it might be the only one. Gao Yuan nodded. I'll keep it short. The Tongtian canon is not some martial art, mystical art, or divine art. It's a record that doesn't exist in the present world. To put it bluntly, it exists in the natural order, a magical record from the records of the realm of the gods themselves. Countless things, big and small, are recorded in it, from the Dark Age to the current era. Everything is recorded in detail, down to every detail. Wait a minute, there's nothing about the mythological era? Nightmare asked, showing the character of a good student. At the mention of these 4 words, reverence surged on the deity expert's face. That era that has already disappeared has completely disappeared. There are no records of what happened in that era at the level of the laws. I speculate that it might have been erased by someone. Oh, go on, go on. Gao Yuan nodded. The Tongtian canon is like the diary of the realm of the gods, also known as the record of the natural order. It's a very vivid name, but it has been recorded for so long that the things recorded have become blurry. The further you go back in time, the fewer things you can see. I think there are very few records left in the ancient era and the Dark Age. As I said, it's not a book that actually exists. It exists between heaven and earth. I happened to come across it once. Before that, I always thought that it was just a figment of someone's imagination. I didn't expect it to actually exist. I occupied it for only 33 minutes and 21 seconds. After that, it disappeared in front of me, dissipating into the natural order and returning to the natural order. I only did one thing after I occupied it. I searched for the root of the realm of the gods, the source of the entire river of time. I didn't look at everything in detail. Even a divine champion couldn't withstand such a huge amount of information. I was just looking for the natural order. There I saw the ocean of natural order, the changes in the natural order over the years. I also saw some scenes from a long time ago. The moment when the world was created, he took a deep breath and said, "In the place I found, I saw a law, a will." Of course, that was just a record. Why, God was just a record of that law and will. There was only one message in it. The 2 priesthoods are related to the realm of the gods itself. Unless the holder of the priesthoods completely dies and is cut off from the cycle of reincarnation, it will not be changed. Nightmare's face twitched. What the hell is that? A lifetime contract? A horrible death? Designed to tire people to death? Don't you know how to write death from overwork? I think the boss has evolved from death from overwork to madness from overwork. Everyone was speechless. Yuanshi was sweating profusely. He waved his hand and said, "So, the 2 priesthoods have no inheritance? Little Star has been reincarnating and hasn't died completely. So he has been carrying the title of the Observer since the ancient era?" Gao Yuan nodded. That's why I said they were a little strange. If there's no inheritance, where did the act of inheriting come from? Chu Yingzhan and Mei Mao thought about it. Could it be that the strange actions you saw were actually them somehow getting the priesthoods and trying to find a way to put it on someone? If that's the case, they might have gone into hiding because they forcefully stole the priesthoods and triggered some kind of calamity. Their clan's vitality was greatly damaged, and they had no choice but to close their doors. Look, even that idiot can force himself to carry the title. Maybe the Guardian is actually not completely dead and is also reincarnating somewhere? Gao Yuan and the others frowned and pondered. Gao Yuan said, "Logically speaking, it's possible. It's a little far-fetched, but we don't know the specifics. Maybe that's really the case." Xu Yingxian heard this and grinned. She puffed out her chest and said confidently, "That must be the case. Let's not talk about it anymore. Next topic, next topic." Gao Yuan's face was sweating. "You have to be careful. This is about the realm of the gods itself. You can't just jump to conclusions because of your guesses." Xu Yingxian rolled her eyes at him. "Why don't you prove it to me now?" Gao Yuan was speechless. "That's right. Don't think too much about things that you can't prove. Thinking too much will only make you more and more confused. Let's just keep our guesses half and half. Besides, it doesn't have much to do with the fake guardians." Everyone thought about it and agreed. So, they did not pursue the topic and switched to the original topic. Then they were all confused. Were we? Little Qing shook her head helplessly. "We were talking about the guardians being killed by their own people. Oh, this action itself may have caused some damage to the realm of the gods' laws that we can't see. In other words, there was a mistake. But in the original sense, that part of the laws was not wrong. It was broken, and it was an error that the realm of the gods could not detect. It could not sense the birth of this error and thought that it was correct, so it did not fix it. So, this part of the error fell on the realm of the gods. That's probably what happened," Gao Yuan said. "And then it affected the entire realm of the gods. The so-called original sin." Fenger sighed. Countless beings protected and blessed by the guardians could only watch as it was surrounded and slaughtered. Not a single one of them stood up because they were one of its members. Whether they stood by and did not do anything, they were accomplices. What meaning did it have? Foolish beings, this is your sin, an original sin that cannot be removed. So that's it. I found it. This is the final shard. All the oddities have been explained. Xian raised her head and recited the passage as if she was reciting it from a book. Little Star said this at that time, not a word wrong. Xu Yingxian looked at her with a shocked and strange look. "You can remember everything after hearing it once. Is this the power of love?" Everyone was about to sigh when Xian's pretty face turned red. She lowered her head and muttered, "No, I heard it 5 times. Little Star's words are obscure and difficult to understand. It's not like you don't know." Everyone was speechless. Sure enough, reality is reality. Bullsh *T, the power of love. You have to listen a few more times to remember what you don't understand. So, no guardians have been born yet? Kai Xia knelt beside Yin Nuoxing, listening to his words and analyzing seriously. Yin Nuoxing nodded. That was what he had learned from the Pillar of Creation. It was a very faint and vague part of it, and even if there were records of the Dark Age, there would not be too much. Countless wars and multiple cycles of reincarnation would ultimately affect the concept layer of the divine realm, and more or less, some information would be deleted and erased. A small disruption of the rules would not appear to be much on the surface, and it would be restored sooner or later. But in truth, in a domain where no one could pry into, that little disruption would cause a butterfly effect in the depths of the sea of rules. And while it would not be so powerful every time, just once would be enough to cause a crisis. There are very few records of the Dark Age. There are so few that I can't see much of it. Otherwise, I would not be walking around in confusion. What is recorded in the Pillar of Creation is mostly the flow of energy, rules, and the movement of time in the realm of the gods. It is like a machine that monitors what happens in the depths of the world, tirelessly recording. I found a wave that exists in the concept layer of the rules. It might be related to the fall of the Guardians. This record has existed for more than 70 years. There is no specific time. The Dark Age was too chaotic. The records of that era are almost the same as the mythological era, which had completely disappeared. The difference is just 50 steps and 100 steps. That wave was born during the Dark Age, directly affecting the rules of the realm of the gods. The current decline of the rules in the realm of the gods is also partly caused by that wave or interference. And I can only think of two things that are directly related to such a degree of destruction. The first is the final years of the Dark Age. The Lord of the Underworld, the heavenly god of primeval beginning, had launched a strike that destroyed all the heavenly gods of the 8 elemental realms. It destroyed all power and chiseled a huge hole in time and rules, leaving behind the scar of the primeval realm that still exists today. It even formed a ring of events. It was a huge wound in the concept layer of the rules, and it would make sense if it caused the 79 years of the rules to wither. However, that scar of the primeval realm is very far away from the realm of the gods now. It is in the depths of the void. I have also seen it in that nightmare memory. The strike of the Lord of the Underworld was a little far from the realm of the gods, and it probably did not directly affect the realm of the gods. The second is what I said just now. The fall of the Guardians, the reversal of the lower order to kill the higher order who represented the rules, caused a butterfly effect in the depths of the sea of rules. The rules kept self-destructing and decaying, and it became what it is today. Between the two, which one do you think is correct? Yin Nuashing looked at Rosy Clouds and asked. Rosy Clouds frowned and thought seriously for a while. She looked up and looked at him. I think it might be the second one, caused by the fall of the Guardians. After all, this is like the realm of the gods itself being sick. The weakening of the rules in the outside world also exists, but it would not affect the rules of the realm of the gods to such an extent. Now, the concept layer of the rules in the realm of the gods seems to be sick, and then there are a lot of external influences, internal and external troubles, and has become very, very weak. Yin Nuashing nodded. That's right. That's what I think too. So, this is the great cause and effect of the wither of the rules in the realm of the gods? Because the people of the realm of the gods killed their own guardians? So, until now, the realm of the gods will not elect a new guardian, and the position of guardian has always been empty. Rosy Clouds lowered her head and muttered. This matter was so terrifying that it was frightening. Yin Nuashing glanced at her, looked up at the sky, and sighed. He closed his eyes and continued to focus his attention on the cyan spell formation. It's a fatal wound. It's 100 times more serious than the wither of the rules brought about by the 8 elements realm. It's so serious that even the protection of the first-generation great deity is unable to take effect. The activity of the void itself is far inferior to the internal destruction. Just as you said, the concept layer of the rules in the realm of the gods is sick, but the pathogen is the people of the realm of the gods. Those life forms that originated from the origin of the realm of the gods. They're the ones who caused the realm of the gods to become what it is today. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.